Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hotter Than Hell podcast. This is your last stop on the crazy train of hard rock and heavy metal. So sit back, buckle in, and hang on. Here we go.
Hey, you Hotter Than Hellions out there. Welcome to the Hotter Than Hell podcast. My name is Steve. I'm your host, as usual, and I got my usual guys with me here.
BC.
And on keyboards tonight is...
BB.
We have returning guest for I believe, the third time, Chris Jankauskas.
Hey, how's it going?
And we have a new guest this evening, his brother Ed.
Hi, beer.
And I just have to say, we talked about it a little bit on the episode, the first episode that we had Chris on. I've known Ed longer than I've known Chris. Ed is the one that got me into Dio, and we talked about that on the Dio episode. And Ed, I want to say welcome aboard, and give us your little musical history here, how you got into this kind of crazy shit. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, sure. Just growing up in Carbondale, loving rock and roll music. Actually, with Deep Purple, our uncle gave us an 8-track of Machine Head, and when my brother and I were little kids, we'd get out in the basement and pop that in there, and we're like, wow, what's that? And then we worked together washing dishes at a certain establishment. When most people were saving up money to buy a car, I bought stereo equipment. And I bought vinyl, and I had like everything. I was really big into the Doors. Fell in love with Deep Purple, and they were already broken up back then when we were younger. Never knew I'd get to see them live.
Yeah, and it's funny. Ed said that I was trying to think of how the fuck we met, and he just said that, and I'm like, it fucking came flooding back to me. We used to wash dishes at a fucking restaurant. Yep. That's another job that I forgot that I fucking had. You at least cleared something up for me, because I was racking my brain even just when we were doing the shows, and I'm like, I know I got to be friends with Ed, and I'm thinking, how the fuck did that even come about? Thank you. After all those years,
Yeah, we discovered we loved music. All we had was this terrible radio, and all it picked up was KRZ.
And you get maybe 1 out of 10 songs that were good, if you were lucky.
Yep.
If you were lucky.
On a good night.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Mm-hmm. And, welcome to the show, and we appreciate you guys. And, no pun intended, we're going to dive deep today into Deep Purple. We brought Chris and Ed, and these guys are our resident Deep Purple experts here. And, yeah, we're not going to cover the whole, life of Deep Purple, because, we like to keep it under 10 hours per episode. And so we're just going to go to a certain point, but we're going to, go from the beginning, and we're going to end up right around Richie Blackmore's last stand, we'll call it maybe. Before we get rocking into that, I want to first thank everybody for the overwhelming amount of birthday wishes and guys that sent in recordings for happy birthday wishes, and everyone that I've seen on the street and texting me, calling me, Facebook wishes, just like very, very humbling and very overwhelming. And I really appreciate it. Love all you guys out there, and thank you once again. Thank you.
And let me interrupt you, Steve. We have one late entry here from our friend Carl Kennedy, the drummer of the Rods. He's a really great friend of ours here. He sends reposts our shit. He's a really great friend, personal friend of the podcast. So here's a nice little birthday wish for you.
In order to tell this story properly, I have to give you a little background. Steve, I didn't know Steve, and living in a small town, raising my daughter, I had been the homeroom dad. I had been anything but a rod. I had been helping in school. I had helped with Kiwanis, and no one knew anything about my past as a heavy metal drummer. And I was more than happy to keep it that way. Until the one day when I'm in the grocery store, and this guy I've never seen before stops me and asks me if I'm Carl Kennedy. And I said, yeah, I am. And the next thing I know, he starts talking about the Rods, and oh my God, I knew you lived here or something, and we just started talking. Little did I know that would be the start of a great friendship. But at that point, Jim Polkowski, again, I had no idea who he was. again, turned into be a great friend. But comes down the aisle and goes, "Oh, it's Carl Kennedy," and starts talking to me. And so now both of them are talking to me, and I'm completely outed in Carbondale after, I want to say, almost 20 years of anonymity. And so shortly after meeting them in the grocery store, I start hearing from other people about the rods and about my past. And so little by little, it started coming out until now the community knows my past. And so I want to say thanks, Steve, for outing me, but it's perfectly fine, and I'm glad we got to be friends. And so happy to know you and your family, and wish you a great happy birthday and a million more. And, proud to have you. What you're doing with the podcast and what you do for the community as a firefighter. I mean, really appreciate the service, and just a great guy. I'm glad to know you.
Thank you, Carl. That's just unbelievable that you would, take the time to do that, and I really appreciate it. And once again, everybody out there, thank you so much. It's just insane. I really appreciate it. I'm like choked up here, but all right, I'll move on. Okay, BC, I will take a drink. Okay. Not much going on in the news area. I got one little tidbit here. It was finally released that KK Downing from Judas Priest, one of the original guitar players that is no longer in the band, is going to put out an autobiography, and it's going to come out in September. I think I saw somewhere what it's going to be called, but I forget what the fuck it's going to be called. But it's going to be interesting when that comes out.
It's going to be interesting to see what he has to say. Like I said, he's one of the most heavy metal guitarists of the day, back in the day. So let's see what he has to say. I mean, I was bummed out when he left the Priest, so let's see what he has to say.
You're going to hear his side, and, there's always two sides to a story, and you never know, maybe Halford will come out with a book and put his side of the story, and you never know what they're going to say, and hopefully he gets back. I think he's a really great guitarist. I think he fits Judas Priest very well. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting too that he's the first guy that's putting out a book from Judas Priest, because they're always one of the bands out there that you don't really hear anything about other than what music they have out. You don't hear the Rob Halford stuff, but like nothing about them recording albums and how they got together and everything. You don't really hear a lot about those guys. They're kind of like an enigma, like bands like AC/DC, Van Halen, that you really don't know what's going on with them until an album's coming out. But even then, you still only get little trickles of information, and it's going to be definitely interesting to see what goes on, and to see if there's any dirt that's going to be dished, and then if it's going to be kind of like a Kiss situation where they're kind of waiting for the other guy to put out a book so that they can refute what the book before them says, and go on and on. So maybe we'll get a whole series of books. We'll get one from maybe Rob Halford next, or Glenn Tipton next, or even maybe Ian Hill. Here's the guy in the background you see, waving the bass back and forth. Definitely the most understated member in the band, but it's definitely going to be a good read, I think. And I hope we talked about the Bruce Dickinson biography a couple episodes ago. The more I thought about it, the less I liked it. There wasn't really a lot of personal stuff in there. Like, I mean, at least mention that you were married or have a kid or some fucking thing. There's you want to hear a little bit of that. I don't I don't give a shit if you dish dirt or not, but you kind of want to get a little more personal stuff. We know you're a pilot and shit, and you fly planes and stuff like that, but people want to know a little bit more about the records and stuff like that, and what's going on, other than the other jobs that you've taken when you're not singing in Iron Maiden. So I'm sure KK will have a good mix of stuff.
I just read Noel Monk's book, Running with the Devil.
That's a great read.
Boy, I tell you, it took 40 years to really understand that band, and it really, if you haven't read it out there, Van Halen fans, do yourself a favor, check it out. Or even the audiobook. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's called Running with the Devil. And
just really good stuff.
It's a great book, and he was their
manager.
Their manager, right?
Yeah, he was their road manager, and then essentially became their manager from Van Halen to Van Halen 2, right before Van Halen 2 came out, or the making of it, through 1984, and was fired.
Unceremoniously.
And never had a contract. He had a 30-day moving contract. They never signed a contract with him, and it ended up that the girl that Alex was dating after, I guess, the 84 tour, or during the 84 tour, who ended up marrying, became their manager. And, the rest is history.
He was out on his ass.
Because Van Halen died then.
Yeah. Yeah, so excellent. Good. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris. Really
Sum it up.
really good book. And there was something at the end there where he said he couldn't listen to Van Halen for the longest time because he was, they boned him. They did. They fucked him. But then after he says at the end of the I won't ruin the end of the book for you.
No,
it's not like a mystery, but it's cool the way that
it's a shame what happened to him.
The way that he's definitely, yeah.
It really was.
Yeah, very good read out there.
I hope they make it into a movie, because that would be an excellent movie.
Cool. That would be cool. Supposedly, speaking of movies, they supposedly cast the guys to play the Motley Crue guys in the Dirt movie.
Yes, my wife Monica was telling me about that.
which I think is going to be such an interesting movie, and I hope they do it justice. I hope they do it right, because there's some really cool musical type movies out there. Usually, it seems like some of the rock ones suck. Like the Runaways one, I thought kind of sucked, But you have movies like Ray out there about Ray Charles. That was a friggin' excellent movie, and there's a bunch out there that are good, but that's something I hope that they do it justice.
I think Netflix is going to do it.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Netflix, yeah.
Good.
They're picked it up or whatever.
I mean, that might even be better if they do it as a couple different ones. You know what I mean? Instead of just doing one whole 2-hour movie or something like that.
Couple episodes or something.
So that'd be cool.
That's a great,
the Dirt, the series
idea.
or something.
The Dirt, the series.
like 8 hours, 10 hours of
But
content.
from nobody's up to
Yeah,
when they made it.
that'd be very
Snort
cool.
and Ants with Ozzy.
All right, so let's dive into the deep end here with a little Deep Purple, and we brought in Chris and Ed. These guys are our resident experts on Deep Purple, and this episode came about the last time we had Chris on the show. We were bullshitting at the end, and actually that night ended up into being Chris's birthday, and we went to a drinking establishment after we recorded, and we were there for quite a while, and BB and I left, and BC and Chris got thrown out of the place. They were there so long.
You guys gotta leave now. Okay.
Just like the old days.
And so we kind of had the embryo of this episode, and then we finally got to see Chris's band Shindig maybe a week or two after that, and Ed was there, and we were bullshitting about it, and we came up with doing this episode. And we were actually going to do the Deep Purple family tree in Deep Purple, but that's way too much stuff to do in one episode, which there will be definitely part 2 of this episode, and there will definitely be the branches of Deep Purple going off throughout 2018 here. But we're going to start right at the beginning, and we're going to let Ed take it away, and let's do this show in marks. We'll do a discussion on each mark, and we'll move on from there. Mm-hmm. Ed, take it away, my friend.
Well, the first mark of Deep Purple started back in 1967, and it was a concept of 2 managers who wanted to throw together some of the best session musicians in the London scene at that point in time. In particular, John Lord, the keyboard player, because he stood out amongst that crowd because he was a virtuoso on the Hammond organ. He was classically trained, but he also did jazz and every other style. They always envisioned teaming him up with a guitarist named Richie Blackmore, who was doing a lot of session work, and he was up and coming, had a name for himself. And they finally connected when they were in Germany. They got together with a young drummer named Ian Pace and changed the name to Deep Purple after they pulled in a vocalist and a bass player, and named after Richie Blackmore's grandmother's favorite song, by the way. Yeah. And they pumped out their first album in about, Steve, you were saying you did the research, 3 days.
3 days, yeah, 3 days they recorded that, which is just
crazy,
insane to think about. And like I said in other episodes, these guys are sick of hearing about me talking about bands recording and stuff like that. But I just find it insane that a band is in the studio, bang, 3 days, bangs out an album, and like these days bands can't do one in like 5, 10, or sometimes even 20 years with the technology that's out there now. It's just fucking unbelievable. It's crazy. Like a whole, an album in 3 days. I mean, it's the early 70s. These guys, banged out a ton of stuff, like, right out of the gate. But just the amazing that they recorded an album in 3 days. And not to say that it can't be done these days, because we talked about it on last week's episode and before Black Country Communion, which ties in heavily with Deep Purple, that they recorded their last album in 7 days. And that was from writing to bang, last note played. And so, you bands out there, I know y'all listen to us. Take some stuff out of this here. Get out there, record some shit. We want to hear new music. So as far as we're talking about Mark 1, who do we got in this? We know we have a different. It didn't start out with Ian Gillan.
Nope.
Roger Glover.
Nope. So Rod Evans was the vocalist, and he was kind of a Tom Jones knockoff. Tom was popular back in the 60s. So they wanted someone that could pull off different vocal stylings. Bass player's name was Nick Simper. But the main components really, what made Deep Purple in every lineup, in my opinion, was the sound of that guitar with Richie Blackmore, the keyboard as a lead instrument, not just some background
stuff.
And then a powerhouse of a drummer, Ian Pace, just underestimated. He's right up there with the original greats like Bannon and Keith Moon. And
yeah, Ian Pace is a monster drummer, and very, very underrated. And I've talked about it on other episodes too, that I've always loved that heavy keyboard sound, that Hammond organ, just like it's a whole nother dimension to the music out there. And I really, because even some songs now that you'll hear a band will put out, and it'll be like in maybe one song, but I'm like, holy shit, there's that sound. And they're Deep Purple guys.
Talk about that sound, like Type O Negative.
Yeah.
When they first came out, they had that big organ. I'm like, oh. And now that I got back into the older catalog of Deep Purple, and I love the keyboards. I love it. It's just addictive, I think.
yeah, no one did it like John Lord.
No.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's an absolute crying shame, and it should be a fucking crime that. And I don't like to talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a lot because it fucking pisses me off.
Come on, tell us how you feel.
But here's a band that is by far and away one of the most influential hard rock bands out there. There's three of them. There's Black Sabbath, there's Led Zeppelin, and there's Deep Purple.
You're saying they're better than LL Cool J? Come on, man.
I know. Shaka Khan. I know. Shaka Khan influenced all those guys, but and these guys are left out. And the biggest crying shame about it is they didn't get in until after John Lord had passed away. And that wasn't a slap in the face. That was a kick in the fucking balls.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Just fucking insane that it took them that. And I've said it before, and they always say that their main criteria to get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is influence. What's the first song every fucking kid learns to play on the guitar? Smoke on the Water, right? And here, oh my God, I could go on for fucking 3 hours of this.
How can a band like Metallica, who's been openly proponents of Deep Purple, getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and just probably one of their biggest influences, especially Lars, how can they get in before Deep Purple when the main criterion is influence?
Right. And the main band that influenced them and other bands that are in there even before them, Deep Purple.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if they and I'm not even going to attempt to make excuses.
That's a whole
for them.
show in itself.
Yeah. But because they're not an American band. Who gives a fuck? Led Zeppelin was right in there. Black Sabbath was right in there. So they can't use that as a goddamn excuse.
They're not an American band. There's people in there that are not a fucking band to begin with.
That
don't even play rock and roll and are
Rush
not a
is
band.
Canadian, right? When then Rush got in, one of the best things Geddy Lee said was, "How do you feel about being in?" He said, "Well, it's kind of strange that we're in and bands like Deep Purple aren't, but."
Yeah, and all the bands like the rock bands. I don't know if there's a band out there that has not mentioned Deep Purple that has been in there.
Right.
You have Jethro Tull winning fucking Grammys, but Deep Purple can't get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, they're in now, but and I think they just did that just to save face. I hate that fucking place. And all right, back to Mark 1. We got 3 albums with or 2 albums with Mark 1?
Three.
Three, right?
Yeah, just over a year and a half.
That's insane. That's insane. We have Shades of Deep Purple, their first album. We have
The Book of
Taliesin.
Book of Taliesin. Okay.
Yep.
Chris is looking at me again with this one. And then, which is weird, self-titled one for the third album.
Yep.
And there's a lot of eclectic music on there, but they're good, but they're 3 very, very different albums. I don't think there's a common thread in any of those albums.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. They were experimenting like a lot of bands were back then.
Yeah, for me, those 3 albums were not really so much on my radar. I listened to them as an audience member when Ed was listening to them. I never reached for that cassette and put it in. It really, for me, was Mark II on that always was. Well, Mark II has always been my favorite, but that is kind of Deep Purple to me. That first Mark reminded me of kind of Pink Floyd's first era. It was a little too psychedelic for me.
Yeah, there's some
60s-ish.
crazy stuff there. And I was telling BC I've been overdosing on Deep Purple for the last 2 weeks since we were talking about doing this episode. And I was at work the one day, we're in between calls, and I was listening to some Deep Purple. I have a little Bluetooth speaker that I listen to stuff on. And my partner was kind of walking around the station, and he walks by the door. I was in the kitchen, and I had the music playing, and I was writing some notes on some of the songs and stuff. And I couldn't even tell you what song it was. It was one of the songs from one of the first 3 albums, and it had this funky keyboard solo type thing in it. And he walks by the door, and I see him stop, and he comes back, and he sticks his head. He says, "What the fuck kind of 70s porno music are you fucking listening to in here?" And I'm like, holy shit, I never really even thought of that sounding like that. But then I'm like, it really does sound like that.
Now you planted the seed.
Yeah, I was like, so now every time I hear that early stuff, I think of soundtracks to movies like Deep Throat or something like that. You see
Deep
some
Throat, Deep Purple,
some just like crazy. But the first 3 albums were very I think the psychedelic. I think that's maybe the common thread of those, that they were so different.
Because I think they were trying to push them towards the hippie crowd. I think at that time, late 60s.
And I think we have to pretty much thank Richie Blackmore for kind of steering the ship away from that. Would you agree, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. You started to see more of that by the time the third album came out. There were some heavier jams. You could see the direction they were going in, and there were also some classical sounding music. So they did hippie, they did psychedelic, they were doing classical because of Richie and John Lord's classical influence. Yeah. And then to leave that era, they started off their 4th album, actually, with Ian Gillan and Roger Glover, the classic lineup, when they came in to play, sing and play bass, was with the London Philharmonic, and it's the Concerto for Group and Orchestra. And John Lord composed it, and it's really unique because it was written for what would it sound like if you had a really hard rock band, which was like Richie's vision, combined with classical music. And when I was younger, I was like, I listened to it like, yeah, okay. But if you go back and listen to it again, especially some of the live when Purple was playing, and when the symphony was getting into it, like, oh, we get it, and their interplay was on. Right. This led to the Metallica doing it down the road. Every band eventually came out with that symphony.
Yeah. Even Kiss did Symphony. Kiss Alive 4, Kiss Symphony 4, which is like, I don't know, it's a little tough to swallow sometimes, that one. But out of Mark 1 though, they had one great hit, and actually they were more popular in the United States. They had the song Hush, which was off of the first album, and great song. And that's one of the songs now that you hear one of these days. You still hear it on the radio now. I know our local radio station plays it all the time, and I think that's a song that any rock fan hears that, you're like, oh, that's Deep Purple. Right, and so that seems like one of the early songs that could have been on one of the other albums, I think.
Yes, yeah, you had that signature sound going. You had the very obvious Hammond organ going, some some really slick drums. Richie soloing, but then back then Richie played the Gibson. He didn't switch to the Fender until later on.
Right, but I mean, still great stuff. And we were talking about it earlier. Ian Pace, his amazing drumming, and it's kind of sad that you don't hear him mentioned when you hear, Neil Peart or
You don't. You
these
really don't.
John Bannon, right, or Bill Ward. You don't hear his
Keith
name
Moon, I mean,
in those in that circle, but like he should be.
He should be.
Maybe because he's left-handed.
Perhaps.
It's always weird watching left-handed drummer, and I'm just busting on it because my wife is a left-hander. I always bust her all the time. But like it's a shame that you don't hear him mentioned in those virtuoso type
Right.
lists. I'll say, when you hear Richie Blackmore all the time. You hear Ian Gillan. You hear John Lord. John Lord. No one will ever be a better keyboard player in a rock band than him. I don't care who the fuck it is.
Amen.
Never, he will never be topped. But I mean, they had some good stuff. And talking about the drums, I couldn't even tell you. I've listened to so much Deep Purple in the last 2 weeks. Like it's like like my head's like a blender. All the songs are blended together. But there's one song where there's a really good drum part in the song, and you could absolutely, positively hear the one part in the drum solo from Kiss Alive 100,000 Years where Peter's playing and he does the part with the cowbell. If you hear that, if you're familiar with Kiss Alive at all in 100,000 Years, you'll hear this song and you will instantly think
The Painter, I think the name of the song you're thinking of.
The Painter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go
100%
back and make sure that it's one of them
Yeah,
songs,
one
but
of
it's
their
just
heavier ones off the first.
phenomenal.
Album.
But
Right.
there's just
Gave you a peek of where they were going.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
and
"Oh,
and
that's
it is.
awesome."
Each of the early albums has a glimpse of what's coming down the road.
Right.
And I think that was, do you think it was like a Richie Blackmore kind of like pushback at that time? Like we're gonna at least get like one song in of this kind of stuff, and not so much psychedelic. We're gonna get a little more hard rock stuff in there.
Yeah, definitely. And then that's really, the more he pushed, the more they realized that their singer just didn't have the vocals to go there.
To go that route.
Yeah.
Right. And so then, you got the first 3 albums under the belt, and like we said, we had a couple glimmers of hope, I will call them, of what's to come. And then, how do they pick up Ian Gillan? Well, they picked up Ian Gillan and Roger Glover pretty much at the same time, right?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
from the same band, right?
Yeah, they were both playing in a band called Episode 6, which we're starting to, after many, many years, to finally get popular, largely due to Ian Gillan's presence and his vocals. And since they fired the bass player, they said to Gillan when they brought him into the audition, do you have a bass player? Just bring him along, just to sit in until they found their bass player. But it just gelled immediately, and he ended up joining the band as well.
He's stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck here, damn it.
He's stuck, absolutely.
Yep.
Next effort of that is In Rock, which is this album. I think just
Yep.
like really cements the direction that they're going in. Songs like Speed King, Child in Time. Child in Time is just a fucking monster song, and
Yep.
and that's kind of a song that's also indicative of the '70s too. You have your kind of 3 to 4 minute songs, and then you have your 10-minute song or your 8-minute song. It kind of reminds me of Iron Maiden. How their songs are kind of, I won't say structured, but like timed out. You have the really hard rocker at the beginning. I'm not saying Deep Purple was copying off of Iron Maiden. I'm totally fucked up now. But if you list the album tracks from Iron Maiden, and look at a Deep Purple album, you have the hard rocker right out of the gate.
Yep.
And then you have you go a couple songs about the same length of time, and then you get into your epic songs, and then it just goes on like that. And I think it's really maybe Steve Harris. He was always a Deep Purple guy. Kind of went along that kind of road, because I mean they have so many epic songs, but there's always that hard rocker right out of the gate. In Speed King.
Yeah, Dickinson too.
Bang.
Gillan was his biggest
Yeah.
influence. He's always in all the Deep Purple tribute concerts. Dickinson.
Yeah,
loves
there's a couple
that
great
stuff.
versions I heard of Bruce singing "Perfect Strangers," I think it
Yep.
was, and just absolutely phenomenal. And and songs like Child in Time, amazing.
Yeah, Child in Time, especially on Made in Japan, there's a crescendo in that the band stops and it's probably like a 1 second pause and you just hear faint claps and then they just start back up.
Bang.
And it sounds like a freight train coming over the audience. And at the very end, when they stopped playing, they thought they were going to do it again, and then there was like a pause, and then you hear the claps because
They weren't sure what was going to happen next.
To me, that has always been the definition of a band blowing an audience away.
Yeah.
You listen to that and you go, "That's how it's done."
They're kind of in shock.
Yep.
They're kind of like, holy
Completely in
fuck.
shock.
Never seen anything like that
Yeah.
before.
And there's, we've been to shows like that too. You're just like, you're too blown away to even fucking clap. You're just like kind of slack jaw, just like,
Yeah, we live for those moments, don't we?
yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And
It's why you go. Like,
oh, it is.
Yeah,
It
can you
is.
do that to me, please?
If you see a concert and you have that one moment in a show, the whole night was worth it. If a band can do that to you and just like totally fuck your shit up, it's amazing. And in talking about in rock, I have to say that the one song that I hadn't heard before that I put on, "Flight of the Rat," is absolutely fucking amazing. And these guys here know that I absolutely fucking hate rats and rodents.
Look out.
And I wish they called it, would you say BC called Flight of the Raccoon or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But like, phenomenal song. I mean, it's just, it's fucking great.
Great album. I mean, Into the Fire. I mean, and Hard Loving Man. I mean,
Bloodsucker.
Bloodsucker. I mean,
And that's what's great about this podcast. I would say 99%. I would not go through my albums or go on YouTube and, oh, well, let's listen to Deep Purple in rock. You know what I mean? But this podcast makes you do your homework and you really appreciate how great a band they were. And I'm going to be honest, I would have never bought this album. But doing your homework and scoping out this band and going and looking of like we said before, like The Tree, what other bands kind of came off of them and rooted up. It just like when this came out in 1970.
I was born in
and like
1970.
today, it's like now today, because I listened to it yesterday actually. Now it's like new music. And like you guys lived it. I never.
It's
I never
amazing
listened
how
to
some of it's still fresh, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now you're like, holy shit, these guys, like Deep Purple back in rock in 1970, that's a great album. Like you said, The Flight of the Rat.
Until we
That's
started
a
looking-
really good tune.
until we started looking into this, I didn't know Deep Purple went back as far as they did, like 67, 68. And I was like, holy shit. I
How
didn't
early
know, I
they
did-
were.
Yeah, I did. I was like, holy, they went back that far. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I learn something new every day.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just, and the amount of Deep Purple that I've soaked in the last 2 weeks here is, I said it before, it's just amazing. It's like a blender, but it's great though. And it's I think I said to Ed before we got on the air here. It's like a whole new, a big discovery. And I said to BC before everybody got here. BC and I were bullshitting, and I said like, holy fuck. I said, we missed so much kick-ass music from these guys over the years. And, I mean, we knew, Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and Space Truckin' and the ones that everybody covers, ad nauseum. But even when you hear those songs, even them covered, you still don't mind them. Smoke on the Water, you could kind of get like, I've heard that enough. That's rock and roll all night.
Yeah.
To me,
Right.
Although I still do love the solo when it kicks, once the music, the tempo picks back up and he comes in with this guitar solo. I still love that. I think it's fucking. I still could listen to that part of the song. It's great. It's like BB said, a very, very eye-opening experience. Just listen to all the stuff that we haven't really had a chance to check out before. And thanks you guys for throwing this out there.
Like how many times we're like, oh, listen to new music. To me,
We're
rock
listening
is
to old
new
music. Yeah.
This is new. I mean, it does have to be released new. This is,
Thinking almost
Yeah.
50 years later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, they keep the momentum going into 1971 with Fireball, which that album opener, Fireball, the song, I literally listened to that the other day. I threw my headphones on. I have a decent pair of headphones. I threw them on. I cranked it up pretty good. And I've heard the song before, but never really listened to it. And it's not a long song. It's like a 3-minute and change song. But like when that song was ending, I'm like, holy fuck, they need to play this live and just extend the shit out of this song, because it is such a great jam in that song that I was like, holy fuck, like this song is phenomenal. And I was talking with Ed earlier. I was going through all the Deep Purple stuff on iTunes, trying to find a live version of that, which I was very surprised that there's not that many versions of that live out there, and Ed's going to tell a story about that in a minute, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just put it out there, and I mentioned this specific version of it from 1996, right?
Right.
And I put that on, and it was produced great, but it was like almost like a thrash version of it. It was like, kicked up in tempo, but it was like it just like totally blew me away. And Ed, there's your segue. Give us the dope on this one.
Yeah, well, I used to do some work for Deep Purple back in the early 90s into 2000. And when they were first eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they just put out a live album to support a studio album they released. And it was just one show they recorded in Australia, a testament of how good they are. You could just like, hey, we're going to do one show and be confident enough to get some material. I convinced the band at that point, let's put out a download of this one song. I can make this thing called an MP3, which we all know what it is today. Back in '96, it's like, ooh, scary.
What the fuck is that?
Right. Well, what would the record company say? Yeah. But they agreed, and anyone that filled out the petition for their original eligibility for the Hall of Fame got a link, and they could download that single that, ironically, Steve searched and found on his own and said, wow. Because when I heard it, I was like, this sounds as good as any new band. This was '96. It sounds as good as any new band as I heard. It was so fresh, and that's why I picked that one as the single for that album.
Huh. That's awesome. And that's back in '96. That was just the beginning of that MP3 era, because that's my wheelhouse.
And it was funny because when
now everything's
everything.
I mentioned that, Ed's eyes kind of lit up. He was like, holy shit, that version. And now that, Ed, you let the cat out of the bag that you worked with Deep Purple, as Chris did, too, correct?
Yeah, we had a company together, and
Give us let us know
so
what's
go
up
ahead,
with
Ed,
that.
you could talk about that.
Well, I was working out in Jersey with an internet company, and actually I kind of could credit Deep Purple for getting me into technology to begin with, because I was just starved for knowledge on Purple. We just didn't hear about them in the States. When we were younger and we developed our musical taste, we were all talking, hey, we missed it, but they weren't around. They broke up, and they were all, so you just didn't hear anything. I found this thing called the internet. It was like, wow, news groups. This band is still touring.
Were you on AOL?
This was before AOL, and then I got on AOL. AOL made it easy. I was like, that was a present from, above when I got AOL. Then it made it easy. So I made that my career path. So then fast forward a year or two, I'm just tracking what's going on, and they had this official website on some fans' server in England. Turns out it was just the fans' boss's server, and it took down the company's website. He was getting 500,000 hits a day on Deep Purple, and he was only getting 100,000, on his own. So get it off there. And I just saw this happen. So I just, out of the blue, I just called up. I was living in New York. I just called up the management company in Connecticut and said, you need me to take care of that website problem for you. Right place, right time.
Wow.
Had the balls to make the call, and I ended up working with them for 6 years. One of my childhood favorite bands.
That's awesome.
totally awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so Ed really kind of kicked it off, and he came to me and he said, "Hey, this thing is happening. What do you say we kind of start a company and we get involved in this?" And so it was quite a ride. We ended up fast forwarding. That was probably what 95 when that happened. Right around 98 when we really built a relationship with the band and their management. They asked us about selling something on the internet, and that's pretty much how it was phrased. And at the time, buying stuff on the internet was still a mystery. I remember seeing commercials from IBM. It's the new age, and it's safe to buy stuff on the internet. And so anyway, we said, yeah, we could do that, and we kind of figured it out along the way. But we recruited some really talented people in that Ed worked with, and we built a custom storefront. Ended up not only selling all their official merchandise, but having exclusives. And the one piece of music that Ed was referring to, the album that came out called Total Abandon, the show in Australia, we sold exclusively. And I remember when we put it up, I think the first day we had something like 128 orders in like 3 hours. And we didn't have any advertising because the website that was getting 350 to 500,000 hits, I don't know, it was a week or something like that at the time, or visitors.
That's even good now.
Yeah, it was amazing, and we had worked with the guys that were running the site, really great guys from over in Europe, and basically said, here's what we're doing, and we're all just kind of a big family of fans, but we were kind of on the business end, and it was literally like pressing a button and opening the floodgates, because he put the announcement out on the site, and a basic newsletter would go out each week, and the store's open and this is available. And we had an email box set up for orders, and I remember Ed says, "I'm going to put this cash register soundbite on every time an email comes in from this email from the orders at," and we just sat there and cracked a beer open, and like 5 minutes later, cha-ching, 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 and we had to shut it off because
it got annoying.
That's all you heard.
We're like, okay, now what do we do? Now we have to turn the fuck off. But it was like, it was cool because now, going back into the early 80s, it was a childhood dream to even meet a band. And so here we're now like working with their management, and they gave us VIP laminate passes, and it was just amazing. I mean, meeting Joel and Turner, Bobby Rondinelli, backstage in New York, and it was just really cool stuff.
They couldn't even get in to see them.
Yeah.
I mean, they, same family, they were in Rainbow, right? And Joel and Turner was already in Purple by the time we'd worked with them. They couldn't even get backstage to meet the band, but we had the VIP, which, that's all access, plus you could escort anyone. And they hit us up to get them backstage. I got the ex-singer of Deep Purple backstage to Deep Purple.
That was the most bizarre interaction. It was like after the show, and Ed and I were standing on the side of the stage, and we were talking to some friends, and one friend said, "Turn around," because somebody had tapped Ed or myself on the shoulder. And we look, as we turn around, there's Joel and Turner standing there, and Bobby Ron. And Joel and Turner's one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet.
Yeah.
He explained that something got screwed up, and I see you got the VIP passes. Do you mind taking us backstage? And we're like, yeah. We ended up going out drinking with them all night.
Yep.
The LeBar bat. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
Great times.
That's crazy. Now, when you guys were doing that, how much input? You may not even know. How much input did the band itself have in what you guys were, I don't even know what you would call it then, but like posting and putting out their newsletter, stuff like that. Was that just all from the management, or was there any contact with, band members? Okay, here's a hello from Ian or Roger or whatever.
Or did they let you take the lead? Say?
Well, it was, they adopted a fan site, and it was organic, and it was run from an email mailing list. And I was just one of the guys on that site. I was the American guy. And all the content was managed by us. And when they adopted us, Roger Glover, he was the one that was the first one to get online on AOL. And he would do little special reports for us. And then he was the one that made sure that anyone affiliated with that site got to go backstage wherever they were touring. If there's a guy from Scandinavia, they were there, he got to go. And then when it became more of a business, when I stood up the storefront, we kind of separated the concerns and let them do the website stuff, and we made the store to look just like the website, plug and play.
Right.
And then we propagated that. We did that with other bands. Like they also managed Dream Theater, so then we started working with Dream Theater. Then we got another gig with Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Brown. And we just took this e-commerce company, and we were the first to do it. I ended up selling it to a company that basically made tons and tons of money. You know, when I had to get out of it. But
That's cool. I mean, that's like you said, you never really thought you'd even meet like your musical heroes or anything like that, and here you are. You're working you're not even working for them. You're working with them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a huge difference.
Yeah, I had to
You're not a roadie. You're not a guy bringing hooking up the drums or whatever. You're working with them to help them, put them out there more. And I think that's fucking awesome.
I had to chase the manager around. I'd collaborate with Roger, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to do." But Roger said, "Oh, all right, let's just make it happen."
And it was a time where the internet was just becoming mainstream. 95, I think Netscape was
Compared to what it
was the first browser,
Right.
where people can kind of consume the World Wide Web, and bands were really starting to embrace it, and we kind of had a head start with what was established. And I remember when we went on tour with them in '96, we invested in a digital camera, and I think it was a Kodak, and it was probably about $400. It was 2 megapixels, right? And so we the big thing was to be able to
State of the art at the time.
shoot
It was.
photos and then put it on a disc and then send it over to our partner in Europe to push it up on a page within a day.
Yeah.
And that was no scanning involved. It was no developing involved.
Right.
So that was
We'd put
quick reaction
Pictures
time
on
at that.
before the end of the show, and Purple was the first band who had that. Really, they just had
the
this
concert.
rabid worldwide following.
He'd put it up real quick, and he would code the HTML at the time. It wasn't an app or anything. And,
Right.
And so and you'd look at the stats, and people were just hitting this like crazy. And of course, he put the newsletter out, and it was really neat. And we had excellent access to to just kind of walk around prior to the concert. I remember shooting some shots of behind John Lord's keyboard just without him there right before the there's this great you could see the pedal. It's just it was a great time.
That's absolutely amazing. And I was hoping we would get into this conversation, and I didn't want to get you guys into it if you weren't willing to talk about it. And I appreciate you guys sharing that stuff with us. Fucking excellent. And now I'm at it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just mean like these guys are such Purple fans. Like imagine like the three of us monkeys like doing something like that, like Kiss. Because I remember the first computer I bought, you and I went down the highway, whatever that was there, next to Dick's. There it was.
Circuit City.
Circuit City. And like we came home and like there was like Kiss pictures like we never saw before, and I'm like, holy shit! Like I just can't imagine how you guys. That's awesome how like you guys just had like the balls just to, just
Go for it.
Yeah.
What could he do? Hang up on me? Say no?
Exactly.
Right.
Because that's how I throw shit out there like, hey, how about an interview? How about this? Some people say yes. Some people say no. Like some people like want to know how many fans we have or how many downloads we have. And you gotta have the balls to get out there and put your name out there.
Like I said, the worst I could say is no.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ed had the balls to do it, and it just right place, right time, like he said, and it just kind of
Absolutely. I mean,
snowballed from there.
Talk about being on the ground floor or something that's just absolutely fucking amazing. And we appreciate you guys sharing that. That's awesome.
Not only the ground floor with the band, but
Of the technology.
The technology.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, that was,
now pretty
back
much.
then that was like, oh, internet, holy shit. Now it's like you can't do nothing.
Now you take it
without
for granted. It was something then that was like pretty much a luxury to have a computer and get online and whatever.
Everybody
now it's
you can
you
do
can
it
pick
on
up
your
your
phone
phone and
now.
you could talk to someone in like fucking Japan or
Yep.
be at a show and like record it live and have it going out live as you're recording it.
Yeah.
But I mean, back then, like I said, you bought a 2 pixel
2 megapixel.
2 megapixel camera. And
Cutting
state of the art 1995. Now I think my iPhone in front of here, I think it's like a 10 megapixel camera on the fucking thing or something.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And the technology is just like friggin' skyrocketed. But like you guys were on the not to sound cliche, but on the cutting edge of everything at that point. You know what I mean? Where now it's just it's taken for granted, and people out there don't realize what it was back then. Dial phones and all that shit, and and now it's not. You don't just turn on your phone and you're on the goddamn internet. I mean, then you had to dial up and
even
all that shit.
Even storefront now, like if you want to sell something on the internet, eBay, or you can get an Amazon store, or you can. There's a million solutions. I mean, we built everything custom.
Yeah, that model we had basically survives to this day.
Yeah.
The only regret I have is, I guess we didn't monetize it. Life happened. The company I was working with was downsizing, and there's lots of pressure. You have a kid, and then
life gets in the way.
Yeah, so I just didn't have enough time to do that and everything else. I ended up selling the intellectual property to a company that becomes $1 billion company. But who cares? I didn't get rich, but I had a great time. Like you said, if you had got to do this with Kiss, your bands, could you imagine your childhood favorite band to work with them?
Yeah. Who else got Joe Lynn Turner to go backstage with them because he didn't have a
Hey, can you guys get me backstage?
Yeah, one of the other things that was really cool about that experience was my dad had just retired, and so Ed and I were working full-time jobs, and so we needed somebody to help us with the shipping. As I said, okay, we made this happen. Now we had to fulfill all these orders. So my dad's like, I'll do it, and so rented a house, and we had the whole garage. I actually lived in the house, and it was all Deep Purple stuff and Dream Theater. And so my dad's job became, after he just retired from the corrections, state correction with Pennsylvania, it was to do all fulfillment. And we had it set up that, it was turnkey. So he would go down there and he'd print orders, because it was about 1.5 miles from where he lived. And then he would fill his truck up with all these packages, and about, I would say, 60% of our orders were international. Go figure, Deep Purple and Dream Theater. Yep. And so we went down to the Carbondale post office. I think it was the first time we had a big order, and the postmaster's like, I don't know what to do with this. Now, this was before eBay,
Right.
What do you, like, and so we had all these bins.
Mailing this to Sweden.
We used to have, 100 packages. And so they actually gave us bins now, and
Poor
we would go
in line behind him at the post office.
we-
I just need a fucking stamp.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
He's a goddamn stamp.
We'd leave 5-6 bins and say, okay, we'll be back, and then just pay the bill. And it was every day, And now you see people, I sell something on eBay or whatever, people businesses, but back then in 1998, it was nobody did that.
Yeah, we did not just the e-commerce solution, the fulfillment, and we sourced merchandise from. You wouldn't believe all the stuff we did with Dream Theater. They gave us all of their original artwork, the scans,
All the stuff from Winterland. We did images and word shirts and.
Every one of their
Dream
tours,
Day
we
Unite,
reproduced the tour shirts.
Chris gave me a poster
That was my original design. I worked with Mike Portnoy
from
on
those.
that,
Yeah. Very cool. I'll have to post that. I don't have it up yet because I'm transitioning my man cave space, whatever. But that's definitely going to be. I'm going to get that poster ready to go, and I appreciate you giving me that. And but guys, we appreciate those stories, and once we do the next episode of that, we'll get into that heavy with the Steve Morris stuff and all that stuff. But and it's funny how just talking about the song Fireball really kind of fireballed into this whole big discussion, which is great. And like I said, I knew you guys were involved in that, and I didn't want to get into that unless you guys are willing to talk about it. And we really appreciate it. And
so, Steve, one of the things that we talked about on the last time I was here was album artwork, and I think In Rock and Fireball are great album covers.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that one maybe you would just happen to buy, Fireball just because it's a fireball with the band's faces in it?
It was so good they named their whiskey after it.
Yeah.
But absolutely, in the In Rock one, we did an episode on here, the Mount Rushmore of guitar players, and of course they had to be United States guys, but that's kind of what that idea kind of came from. Yep. And we're going to be doing we're going to do European guitar players, and we're gonna do like frontman and bass players and drummers and stuff. But that was pretty much of an idea that kind of came from that. Just who would you put up there? And I mean, and that was what in rock was, what did we say, 1970.
Yep.
And here, we're still talking about it now, and Fireball.
Yep,
That's
71.
that is a cool album cover. They're
Awesome.
all in the little meteor going through space, and just the create, and it's funny because like you'll see some albums that you're like from the 70s, some bands you're like, what the fuck, like even like I use just like look at Led Zeppelin 4 for an example. Who's this guy with the fucking sticks on his fucking back on the out? Like what is that?
Yeah.
But you have Deep Purple Fireball. They're in a fireball. That's you kind of know what it is. Like in Led Zeppelin, unless you don't know that's Led Zeppelin.
Deep Purple and rock, I think the irony is great because all these years later, they didn't know that would become the iconic album for them because that kicked them off in the world. They were huge everywhere but the United States, ironically.
Which is insane.
Yep. And we'll get to that.
And which is crazy too because when they had their first hit, it was in the United States.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it seems like it just kind of reversed after that.
Exactly what happened. Yep. They were huge in
which is
1970 everywhere. And then the United States, they caught on in 72. After they already decided to break up. So even Smoke on the Water itself, that didn't get popular from Machine Head.
That wasn't the first single.
Made in Japan came out after that, and it was people playing the live version from Made in Japan that made that song popular and got Machine Head to go up the charts. By that time, Gillan had already left, and they were rehearsing with David Coverdale. So just when they exploded in the United States.
The version before takes off when the next version's getting ready to launch.
Yeah, they shot themselves in the foot. They were the world's. They outsold Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, 72, 73 in album sales and concert grosses. And if they didn't self-destruct, what would have been?
Right. So in '74, the California Jam, which is the Mark III lineup, as a result of really the Mark II lineup's popularity and Smoke in the Water from Made in Japan, they headlined it. And I think Sabbath was on that bill, and there was ABC televised. You could see it on YouTube. Richie actually
350,000.
Yeah, 350,000. They blew the stage up. Richie's guitar tech put I don't know if it was
gas.
It was gasoline. So basically, he put like a gas explosive. Think about this. You're a fireman. In the back of his amplifier, blew his amplifier up, right? Caught the stage on fire.
And he always had a big, humongous stack of Marshalls.
Yeah,
Like the whole thing.
He had this one
Holy
dummy
shit.
that is he told his tech to set up, and basically they caught the stage on fire. They had to get off towards the end. They had to run off. They got in their plane, and they had I think warrants out for their arrest. Right?
Oh, ABC was going to. He destroyed the camera too. He smashed the guitar during the solo during Space Trucking, and it was like jagged the edge of it. And he jammed it right down the
right in the camera,
right in the camera.
Right in the camera. I've seen that.
And they had to pay
that
ABC
rock and
for
roll
the
or what?
camera
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, now get the fuck out of our country.
Yeah, right.
So, but going back to the popularity, I think we're kind of fast forwarding in years here, but Deep Purple, they were the kings in the early '70s. They really were.
So that show in San Francisco, is that the one there's an actual recording of it out and there's like a concert? You know what I have that. Isn't it ironic how the back of the stage there's that rainbow over the crowd, over the band? You're like, oh, that's the Rainbow Rising fucking rainbow. And down the road, you don't know it then. Like, wow.
Yeah. I always was wondering what it would have been like. Hey, I showed up this huge concert, and I want to hear this song, "Smoke in the Water," and then when they play it, it's like, wait a second, that doesn't sound like that's not the singer that's not on the radio. What's going on?
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been weird, but it was David Coverdale.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was like one of the first.
Here's a song for you.
Because it was early in his career when he was only like 18. They said.
Yeah,
right?
He was selling
He
shoes.
was really young.
I mean, he had no idea who he was auditioning for, and he just came in. He submitted an ad. They put an ad in Melody Maker. It's like any local band, And this guy shows up, and he was just blown away. It was Deep Purple, and he thought he didn't get it, but, you know. And he was ugly. So they had to give him plastic surgery. They had to get his eyes were cross-eyed. They had his eyes fixed. He was a mess when he first joined. They prettied him up before they went on tour.
Wow.
Cross-eyed David.
No
with a
shit.
Cross-eyed Mary.
Hey, so going back to Fireball, and here's a question for Ed. The song Fireball, the intro, and Steve, he said it's just, you know, when it hits you, before the band comes in with the drums, or I should say that Ian Pace comes in, what did they record for that effect?
That was an air conditioning unit being turned on, and then Pace just comes in with the drums.
Right?
Yep.
Using anything at their disposal.
But does it sound awesome?
It does.
It sounds like a fireball coming in, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's the production value of Deep Purple too, and that, you know, was Glover influential in producing back then?
Yeah, Martin Birch, but yeah, Glover worked closely with him. Yeah.
So
Gotta love Martin Birch too. Hey, Iron Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's another
family
and,
tree
and it,
thing.
yeah, and it's amazing. Just and we'll get into the family tree in another episode. It's crazy. Ed showed me the part of the schematic. I will say, it's just I'm looking at a huge blank wall. I could take that wall up with no problem whatsoever. And you know, back to Fireball. Like No 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 is friggin' great on there. Not the Kiss version of No No No, by the way. And you know, the Mule, that was a live staple for them for a long time. That's on Made in Japan.
Yeah,
and
that was
just
Ian Pace's drum solo for their live shows. Yeah.
great, just a great friggin' album. You know, and then they go right into what they consider their masterpiece, maybe you could say.
Yep.
Machine Head, where they were going to Switzerland to record it with Rolling Stone's mobile recording unit, and Frank Zappa's band burned the place down, and that's where they got the Deep Purple, or not Deep Purple, I'm sorry, Smoke on the Water from, right?
Absolutely true. They were supposed to record. They wanted to get a live feel. That was the whole point of this album, because they wrote it on the road. And they just did nothing but tour and tour and tour. Even Fireball, one before that was just, you take a couple weeks from the road and all these things we did on the bus, get them down on tape. So they really wanted to have that, you know, a theater experience. So they went to see Zappa the night before in this theater they were supposed to record in, but there was a guy literally in the audience who had a flare gun.
Some stupid with a flare gun.
Yep. He shot it up into the roof. And it burned down, and the theater was on the shores of Lake Geneva. And Purple could not believe. They went back to the hotel and like, okay, there's a place where we're supposed to record our album tomorrow.
What the fuck are we gonna do now?
Yep. The smoke was just going across the Lake Geneva, and that's when Roger Glover said, "Oh, smoke on the water," and he wrote it down on a napkin. That's where the name of the song came from.
That's just amazing, and
so they ended up in an old hotel, and
and that's their. I mean, there's if you don't know that song, you're just fucking brain dead.
Living under a rock.
But I mean that whole album is just amazing. It is, and go ahead, BC.
I just go say Space Trucking.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Space Trucking, Highway Star.
no,
Highway Star.
a friend of ours, son,
Before.
Brandon, when Tesla did the covers album, I don't know how long ago that is. They did a cover of Space Trucking. We're driving down the road, me and a friend of ours, and his son, Brandon, his son, little Dave, he's in the back.
Oh,
seat.
my nephew, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to say.
He's not my friend. He's my nephew.
No,
and my friend too.
I said Damon. I mean Damon. Well, he's
Okay.
your brother-in-law. But, anyways,
I love the bus pieces.
we're playing. That's on, and Space Trucking comes on. We're like, yeah, rocking out. He's in the back going, and then come on, let's go, Space. And he's going, are they saying Space Turkey? And he was younger than I was fucking pissing my pants laughing, going, yeah. And from then on, I keep, let's
You always
go,
speak
Space
Space
Turkey.
Turkey.
Come on.
Yeah.
One of the production values that I always loved about Space Trucking was when Ian Pace gets into his drum solo.
Yep.
It almost sounds he's pounding the shit out of the drum set, and it's just a classic, drum solo in within a song. And it sounds like the drum kit is falling apart because you hear these squeaks right? And so that's just John Lord going, just hitting the keys and making it sound
Right.
as if the drum kit's
Rocking the
falling
Hammond,
apart,
he just,
right?
Right.
He knew how to
Yeah.
shake a Hammond and get a little weird effect on it.
And it's just, you know, I've been a Deep Purple fan for so many years. These little nuances that you hear in the songs, like that's what always attracted me to Deep Purple.
And it's funny too that that you mentioned that, and we've had several conversations about Van Halen, and after we were talking about them, I think we talked about Van Halen quite a bit the night you guys played when we were done, and I always think of Van Halen as the band that when you listen to them. And I'm sure you probably feel about Deep Purple this way. That's why I'm getting into this part of the conversation. That like all the Van Halen stuff, there's so many little nuances like that like you know like the the little tinks and little tiny licks and the little different shit like that. And I'm gonna have to listen to that now a little closer. But like and that's the sign of a true fan. You know every single little different thing that isn't normally in a song.
Well, it goes back to that imagery, before video, and you create this illusion, and maybe it was accidentally on purpose, which is one of Roger Glover's albums.
Yep.
It almost feels like the lug nuts on the drum kit are coming off. And he's just pounding, but it's just John Lord putting those little squeaks in there, and the production. It's beautiful. From a musician's standpoint, it's just a beautiful.
And there's no guitar in it at
construction,
all.
nothing.
Just one bum on the bass. That's it. Bum, and then bass slamming away, and these weird sound effects, and you have no idea that's a Hammond organ.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
It's and I love stuff like that. Just the little nuances that make you, like real fans, like people that actually listen to music are gonna really take and embrace pretty much. Because if you hear the Tesla version of that song, you're not gonna hear that, right?
No.
So you're gonna be listening to that song hearing that sound in your head, but it's not actually on the song.
Yeah. Now, Space Truck and the studio version's great, but as we move forward into the next album, the live version of that,
Made in Japan.
is just over the top.
Absolutely.
Just over the top. And I think we'll kind of get down the road on this a little bit, but when they reunited, they did a very similar version on the Perfect Strangers tour. And for those people that didn't get to see them in the early 70s, they really treated their fans right. And Ed got to, fortunately, see him on the Perfect Strangers tour. I didn't. I saw him on the House of Blue Light tour, but I was still happy I got to see the original Mark II lineup, as it's turns out now.
Right.
Still a great concert. But anyway, it's a little fast forward in the timeline here.
No, I mean, well, it is actually the next album, even though we're just doing like pretty much, but like you can't talk about Deep Purple without early Deep Purple without talking about Made in Japan. It's just if you don't talk about that, then you're not really doing them justice at all. I don't think. I mean, that is one of the live albums.
Going back to Metallica, Lars Ulrich, that's one of his main influences from Deep Purple. Made in Japan.
Yep.
He had an interview, I think it was in Rolling Stone last year, and he talked about that.
He talked about it,
And he just gave it the highest praise.
And I think that's what made Deep Purple different than any of the other big name bands. You go see Deep Purple, you are going to get blown away live. They were the live band. So, yeah, their studio stuff, like if you stack them up against Led Zeppelin or even or Black Sabbath in popularity and albums and notability, Purple just blew up because of their personalities. But what they did live, they are musicians, aficionados.
Right. And that's probably why you guys are big Tool fans, because that's what the musicians love Tool.
Right.
And I've said this to Chris before. You guys being Tool fans, now I know why you're Tool fans just from that statement.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I would say, for those listening that aren't really familiar with Deep Purple, like, where do I start?
They're a live band. That's really
Made in
where you
Japan.
start.
Because it's really a greatest hits of the Mark II lineup.
Right.
The early Mark II lineup.
Right.
And it's it's captured in their finest form.
And it's such an early live album. You know?
Yeah, it's 1972.
Like that's the year I was born. So what other bands are releasing live albums in '72?
They didn't want to. That was a contractual thing. It was Ian Gillan swears to this day. I just saw an interview with him from maybe 3 or 4 months ago. He's never listened to that album. He's just not into live albums.
Really?
Yeah, because he had already resigned from the band when they wrote it. When they went over there, and Glover knew that were his last concerts.
That was it for
basically.
him.
Yeah, they did one last very small tour after the last album.
Right. For who do we think we are? Right.
Yeah. But it was already done by the time that album came out. They knew that Ian Gillan had handed in a resignation, literally. And they were touring with him for 9 months, and no one even said, hey, can we talk this over? Can we work it out?
It was a handwritten note he gave
Yeah.
management, right?
Because
Imagine that.
could you stop the touring?
Imagine Robert Plant leaving with a resignation letter.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm out.
But the management was so greedy. They were the biggest band in the world then. They were like, no, the money's rolling. No, we're going to tour you until you, literally, they
Till you
got
fucking
sick.
drop.
Hepatitis struck the band several times, or they had to stop because there's just from 1970 to 72, that was just on the road constantly, and they pumped out 4 albums in between.
Right.
that time.
and what was it in '72? They did 3 or 4 American tours. Can you
6.
imagine? 6.
6 American tours.
6
That's
tours.
insane.
Can you
Year.
imagine that in 1 year? Right? Can you imagine that?
No. You'd never see that now.
Yeah.
Never.
Never.
It's just you can even the concept.
You can't
is-
even wrap your head around that now
It's just you
because
can't.
of the way the concerts are nowadays. And the only thing I
even
can
in the '80s. Even in the '80s, imagine doing 6 American tours in 1 year.
No. Mm-mm. I mean, did they break it up? Do they do like the Southern United States do they consider that one tour? Then like
Well,
North,
there
like
was supposed to be 4, but
breaking
then-
up regionally.
Yeah, then there was sickness because of hepatitis, so that they stopped the one and they had to reschedule, and it just drove them into the ground.
But still, it looked like they just ground. Looks like they were just grinding it out.
yeah, bad
You know?
management. That's what it was. That's what killed Deep Purple.
Wow.
I'm sure you get a band down the road that much. You're together, and like you mentioned before, personality clashes. I mean, you're living with these guys.
Yeah,
And it's got to get to a point where every fucking thing that you don't like about whoever
Yeah.
is going to seem like 20 times worse every time they do it because you're away from your families. You're thrown out there on the road.
Drugs, alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gillan and Blackmore were best friends when they first started. They roomed together back in the In Rock days. But they went from that to they couldn't even look at each other on stage by 1973.
That's crazy. That's just insane. And talking about Made in Japan, Highway Star, Child in Time. We talked about Child in Time before. Just wow, just jaw-dropping
Epic.
music, epic song on that. Smoke in the Water, and it's funny too because if you look at the sets they're playing, Smoke on the Water is the 3rd song on there. So they're not playing it as an encore, which I'm sure they do now.
No, that wasn't their
You know,
single.
it's
Never
not.
before was
yeah,
their single.
That's just a song that's in the middle of their set. It's not, that's not a classic song at that point. It's just another song that they're doing live. Strange Kind of Woman, Lazy, Space Truckin'.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that shows you, even look at the lengths of the songs on these. Highway Star, 6:25. Child in Time's over 12 minutes. The Mules, 9:50. That's the drum solo song, right?
Yep.
Lazy is almost 11 minutes long.
Great
Space,
version.
yeah.
Great version.
Lazy.
Yeah.
Better
What a
than they
great
had in the
version.
studio.
Oh,
His version
Yeah.
of Lazy on there.
And
Phenomenal.
Space Truckin'. It's 20 minutes long.
yeah. So here's a little story about that version of Space Truck, and I remember, going back in growing up and listening to music. Ed and I were always tied to the hip because, we just were only 3 years apart, and we just kind of lived it and grew up together on it. And I remember getting, I think it was a used copy of Made in Japan at the local flea market. Remember that?
Yep.
And I remember when we opened it up, the record had one song on side 4, and it was Space Truck, and because it was 20 minutes long. You still have that.
Yep.
You have a very good vinyl collection.
Yeah, even when I work with them, a lot of the stuff they reissued, remastered on limited edition vinyl, like the 25th anniversary of Machine Head. I think they had 500 pressings. They gave me a couple of those. I never even opened them. It must be like an audiophile's dream.
Yeah, and half of my, well, more than half of my vinyl is gone. But I think the first Deep Purple album I ever bought was probably Perfect Strangers.
Excellent.
You know, and that's, I base a lot of my Deep Purple stuff off of off of that album. But I mean, it still is that classic sound though.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
But at that point, I wasn't aware of any of the, you know, the Mark II, Mark III. I didn't know any of that shit. And that came out in what, 86? I think that came
84.
out? 84. And I mean,
So
just
let me ask you this: when you got Perfect Strangers, you were not really a historical Deep Purple fan. That was a new album. Like, how did you get turned on to that?
I was aware of them. You know, I knew Smoke on the Water and, you know, Space Truckin' and Highway Star. I knew the songs. I wasn't really into them, and I don't know why. You know, at some point I didn't say, you know, I need to check these guys out. And the only thing I could think of that I didn't do that was because around then there was so much shit coming out. It was Crew and everybody, you know, like I'll even throw, you know, Poison, all these new bands coming out to check out, and I'm at that point my mindset is, you know, they're an old 70s band. They have a couple good songs, and they never really got on my radar. But then when Perfect Strangers came out, and
Because that album charted
Yeah.
as an album
I
in
know.
'84. That was
and I think I probably have Ed to thank from that.
Yeah.
Because at that point we became friends, and he got me into Dio, and then I knew there was that connection there, and I think that's how I actually ended up picking that up. But which is weird that I didn't go back and check out all that other shit. But I don't know why I never went back to check any of that stuff. I really I don't. But I love that album. Like I just like dug the shit out of it.
It was Kiss, and then Cheap Trick, Van Halen for me, and then it was just the early '80s.
But then you hit Twisted Sister and
The early-
Dockin' and all the you know, quotations, hairband shit came out.
The early
And
'80s just was
there was
just
such a saturation of
We didn't
music
have enough
then.
money to go back.
No.
that
I don't
far.
think I went back because there was just so much new
And I knew it
new
was,
bands to
you,
check
you,
out.
knew, you
then.
knew it was Smoke in the Water, but when that Perfect Stranger,
Yeah.
and
And it was
I remember
cool,
hearing
too,
that
because
first time going,
that was at that time. We'll have a small Perfect Strangers discussion here. We'll get into that in a little bit. But like that was so much different from everything else that was out at that time.
yes.
It was Deep Purple.
Right, but I don't know why that didn't
Well, the reason
launch me backwards.
because that album for Ed and I, when that album came out, and again we'll cover that down the road in the timeline. That was
Dream come true.
like, wow, I can't even
They're
believe
back,
this is
right?
happening.
I never thought that. I thought they hated each other so much they would never reunite.
It was, Rainbow was huge. 82, 83, going all
Because you're like
incarnations.
straight between the eyes right
Yeah.
around then, right?
Gillan
Yeah,
had
Street
just
of Dreams
yeah.
and all that.
and this
yep.
goes into the family tree. Gillan had just recorded Born Again with Sabbath, and so Glover was in Deep Purple.
Or Rainbow. He was with Rainbow.
Excuse me, yeah, he was in Rainbow, and I think Lord and Pace were in Whitesnake, or maybe
Lord was. Pace had left, but he was with Gary Moore.
yeah. Okay, so I mean everybody was kind of scattered, but their tagline for that album was "Destiny brought them together." Period. Again. And it couldn't be more true. And a lot of bands that come back and they're going to have a reunion, and it's all about the tour and the money. But in my mind, that album is the greatest reunion album of any band ever, because I think it could be one of the to me it's ranked as my favorite, but it goes right alongside Machine Head in quality.
It even beats out Psycho Circus. I'm sorry, I didn't throw that out there. Not even close. Not even in the same. They're not even in the same state of the ballpark for that. Yeah. So But like I said, I don't know how I didn't launch backwards.
Because there was so
listening to
much
that.
stuff
There was
coming
just,
out.
we were just like
Just-
overstimulated with.
You're what?
Everything
13,
coming.
14, 15 years old, and
Yeah.
it was just...
Oh yeah.
Every
Great time
I
to be
wasn't just
alive,
listening
right?
to
Oh,
rock.
fuck yeah.
I would never
A lot of
listen to
music and no
AC
money.
anymore for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me.
How
you
can
turned
you
me
afford
on
to get beer?
AC/DC.
and
See, we're
CD?
hey,
Yeah.
a
Back
little
then,
back
it
and
was
forth there.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys, I mean, made in Japan, just like kick ass. I know we got kind of off topic there, and you know we'll steer the ship back into the canal here. And after Machine Head Made in Japan, who do we think we are? What, thoughts on that album, you guys? What do you got for me?
You know, a lot of Deep Purple fans say, well, it wasn't as good as the others, and I just never agreed. I thought it was one of my favorites. I thought it was a great natural progression from Machine Head. You have Woman from Tokyo, which is still all over rock radio, but you know, kind of like a Flight of the Rat. There's one song on this album called Rat Bat Blue. That it's my all-time favorite Deep Purple song.
Why do they got to bring the rat into it all the time?
Return of the
And
Rat.
I was gonna mention that song. Ed, is the one that really stood out on that album for me.
That is a great riff.
I'm not really sure why they're so entranced with rats. Maybe they knew 40 years, 45 years down the line, I was going to be listening to this shit and complaining about it. But I mean, another great, and you're right, Chris, fucking unbelievable riff.
See, that's the thing about Blackmore is he always was, I mean, one of the best guitar players of all time in rock, but his sweet spot was always the simple riff, and that's a very simple riff, just like Smoke on the Water. Really, even One from Tokyo, it's based on an E chord. It's basically an arpeggio out of an E chord, but it's brilliant. He was brilliant even when he got through Rainbow. Just brilliant at taking these small bits, coming up with the hook, and just making signature rock.
Like Since You've Been Gone, Power.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
All of them were in the same boat.
The saddest thing is now he's not creating any of that type of music anymore. He's doing that Renaissance stuff now, the Blackmore's Night stuff.
Right.
I'm not really familiar with any of that stuff at all. Have you guys heard any of that stuff? Or
I can't really.
it's not
bring
really it's not
myself-
rock, right?
No,
it's
it's
kind of
not.
like
It's
it's Renaissance music, right?
It's good. It's considered like in that genre. He's considered the god, but I'm not. That's not my thing.
We want the rock stuff,
Yeah.
but he won't even talk about the rock stuff now, right? Like
He's doing Rainbow
Yeah.
stuff.
he is,
He
but
just
apparently he's
softened.
still not like really doing interviews or anything like that because he won't talk about any Rainbow stuff, anything like that. He won't talk about Deep Purple. Like people don't want to. I'm sorry, no offense, Richie, but like we don't want to hear about that Renaissance shit. We want to know, your Deep Purple thoughts, or you don't even have to get into personality clashes with the guys, but like talk about the music.
Yeah.
That's-
Richie,
Talk about the music.
he's always been a little stubborn, and he just he kind of gets in a mood, I think, sometimes where he doesn't think of the fans. I think he's a little selfish, and I mean there's so many fans out there that appreciate what he did for rock music, and for not being able to talk about it because of whatever issue you have with it, I think is an injustice to the people that really appreciate him and the art that he created.
Like when he
I
doesn't
couldn't
come out
agree
on
more.
stage for an encore, and the other four would come out. They're so embarrassed and play Smoke on the Water without him at times because the show wasn't. You were all terrible. We can't go out. He is such a mental case that if he doesn't feel it's 100%, if he's not doing something brilliant, screw everybody.
That is not worth it.
Yeah. Or if somebody pissed him off, like Gillan, and I couldn't even imagine being in a band with him. Like God bless John Lord and the other guys, but like think about being in Madison Square Garden and you go to do your encore. And I'm not saying that happened in Madison Square Garden, just using it as an illustrative point. And Richie Blackmore won't come out to play it, and they actually would go. And this was on the Perfect Strangers tour. In some instances, they would play without him because it just something happened in his head. Horrible when you think about
like
it.
you said, it's absolutely an injustice to the fans.
It is.
Yep.
It is, and it's funny because even just talking about this, who do we think we are? Like this album was not on my radar at all. I mean, I knew Woman from Tokyo. I didn't know any other song on this album at all. Mm-hmm. I have never heard any of these other songs at all, and I just listened to it, a couple days ago. And like once again, we bring the Rat out, Rat Bat Blue, like great, but like and that's kind of like my thing with music stuff. BC and I have talked about it like tons of times on the show here. That people, they want the hits, and we just came back from a break and we were talking, and I went to use the facilities, and he was talking to Chris about Quiet Riot, and like they're playing kick-ass songs and we're loving it, and the crowd's like just fucking standing there with their teeth in their mouth, and then Come On Feel the Noise comes on, and then they're crazy. Like, whoa, like
fucking hate that.
Yeah. But and I think this album is indicative of that. Woman from Tokyo, like I never knew what album that was from, but then I listened to this whole album. I was like, holy shit, great. Super Trooper, one of my buddy, he's a corporal in the state police. I call him Trooper. I'm thinking this is his fucking theme song, even if it has nothing to do with him. It's still the name of the song. But I mean, it's an excellent album.
Yeah, even Smooth Dancer. That song was. Mm-hmm. Listen to the lyrics of that. That's Ian Gillan saying to Richie Blackmore, who dressed in black suede, the man in black, basically, I'm not going to take your crap, and if you don't get your stuff together, I'm leaving. And this whole album was recorded after Gillan gave his resignation notice.
So it's their breakup album.
It is. It really is. And
think about that today, right?
Yeah.
Just to put a whole song on it, Blackmore didn't even know. He just basically came in, did his thing, and now there's an album out here. He's listening to. He's talking about me, that bastard.
There goes another encore. We're not playing again tonight.
Yep. For me, this album was always one of my favorites. Only 7 songs, and the big hit is Woman from Tokyo, and I always love Rat Bat Blue. I agree with that. It's one of my favorite Deep Purple songs. But just all the way through, and it's one of those albums that you have to listen to it in its full context as an album. Put it on headphones, always better.
Right
Steve,
through.
I know you're a big fan of that. Go Mary Long, Super Trooper, Smooth Dancer, Rat Bat Blue, Place in Line, great blues song.
Oh, blues,
wow,
great blues.
And then Our Lady, it was about the Queen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the classic keyboards in that song, Our Lady, and the way that song just it's the outro of the album.
And it's sad almost.
Just
because it was really the last.
Takes it out the door.
Yep.
Until fast forward the reunion.
Yeah, but you got to think too. Ian Gillan gives his resignation. Is everyone in the band thinking, you know what, this is it? Let's go out on a high note here. You don't know what the future's going to bring in, and they did tour a little bit for this.
Yeah,
for this album. Contractually,
Yep.
I'm sure they got them out on the road, but not long though, right?
No, it was a matter of basically 3 or 4 weeks. A couple shows in Japan, just contractual.
Right. And then
didn't they have? And I think it's on YouTube. There's something in the Nassau Coliseum, or was it Hofstra?
Hofstra University. Yeah, you're right.
They did a couple dates in the States, and I think Hofstra University, which is right there, in Long Island Coliseum.
Right.
That is the only live version of Deep Purple Smoke on the Water you'll get from the 70s, from the original lineup, in color too.
Yeah, and it's a great version. I think they used it on one of the VH1 specials or something.
Oh, really?
And at that time, Gillan had a beard, so he had a completely different look, and the band sounded great, but nobody knows the underside of the belly.
Right, but they had pretty much checked out at the time.
Yeah, Gillan had. He was cast as Jesus Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar, and Lloyd Webber.
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, Andrew Lloyd Webber. He never did he was on the soundtrack, never went and did the stage theatrical, but he had a lot of things going for him at the time, and he was basically saying, I don't have to put up with your crap,
I got other shit I could do.
Yeah.
And still be lucrative and make money, and
that's what Blackmore was
shit
thinking too. He actually his idea was to, at that point, instead of carrying on, he just wanted to steal Ian Pace and form a power trio with Paul Rodgers from Free. This is before Rodgers.
Yeah, before Bad Company.
Bad Company.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen because he actually decided, wait, I got this other offer over here Bad Company. I'm going to do that instead,
Right.
or else that might have actually happened.
How about that?
Another one of those interesting what ifs.
Yep.
You know, it could have changed the the whole face of rock as we know it. You know,
I would have loved to
which
heard it.
would have been
demo or
cool just to
something.
hear. Yeah,
I think that would
absolutely.
have been cool.
Like what just a couple sessions and
Yeah.
hear what definitely would have taken place there. And Paul Rogers, great singer, and saw him a couple times live. I thought he was very, very full of himself when we saw him live at Montage the one year.
Now he's going out with Jeff Beck this summer.
Oh, really?
If you saw that,
I didn't see that.
that should be interesting.
Definitely something to absolutely look for.
With Ann Wilson, I believe, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a.
I think the closest date is somewhere in New Jersey or
Oh, really?
Long Island.
Yeah,
or-
maybe it's worth a little road trip. In.
Now, if you've never seen Jeff Beck in concert, and if you like guitar, I highly recommend. Right, Ed?
It's like seeing God play guitar.
He is
We'll
incredible.
definitely have to check that out.
I've heard
Absolutely.
nothing but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never hear somebody say,
Two or
it's
three
Jeff Beck."
times that we've seen him. Fantastic.
And he's a female bass player, and she's fucking phenomenal.
She was 16
She's incredible.
when we saw her.
Yeah.
Unreal.
She's incredible. I've seen her on a couple of the
Saw him down at the Cultural Center. That was a great show.
the guitar the crossroads that Eric Clapton would have. Jeff Beck played on some of them, and I saw that, and I was like, I mean, Jeff Beck is Jeff Beck, but like I was just like drawn to this girl playing bass. She was like fucking like unbelievably fucking good.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
fucking
incredible.
unbelievable.
I remember the first time that I saw him. Ed was with me. He was in New York with Jennifer Baton, who was Michael Jackson's guitar player in the '80s. Blonde hair, she's a great guitar player. And
Looks like she belonged in Vixen.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And what a compliment to his style playing. That was a very interesting production that they put on together.
Yeah. And what does this have to do with Deep Purple?
Not much, but we're known for going off on tangents here.
Blackmore is such an egotist. Beck is one of the few guitarists he'll say he's not better than Beck.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He doesn't put himself above
Yeah,
him.
he doesn't. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, he doesn't put himself above Beck.
He never liked Eddie.
No.
Respected him, but never liked him.
Yeah.
Not
And
personal,
that's
but-
because he was a jerk when Eddie Van Halen met him, and he was a huge influence on Eddie. But
Totally.
Eddie purposely avoids mentioning Blackmore and giving him any credit at all.
Because he was such a dick to him.
when he met him. Yep.
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 Be nice, people. Just
Come on.
fucking be nice, all right? That's
Blackmore's
all.
a jerk.
If you're taking anything away from the show, don't be a dick.
Be nice, drink beer.
All right. Now, that's the end of Mark II, right?
That's it.
That's it. Ian Gillan,
Yep.
out the door.
To Glover's surprise, he didn't know that he was going to get the boot either. He
Right.
thought he was just going to be, we're going to get another singer. But Blackmore said, we got rid of the bass player last time. Let's get rid of him too, and we'll keep the core nucleus.
So they came in together,
Yep.
and they're leaving together.
Yep.
So they pick up Glenn Hughes, and they were going to just go with Glenn Hughes as a singer too, right?
There was
Singer and
some
bass player.
talk
There
about
was,
that, 'cause
it wasn't an actual thing, but it was
Yep.
in the works at some point. Then they got
Yeah, he was the first person to join the band, and they played with the notion of it, but the management decided, no, you have to have a front
You need a
lead
singer. You need a
That's-
front man.
That's the way it works,
Right.
right? So,
Back in that day, yeah.
yeah. So, Glenn Hughes was, I think, a phenomenal upgrade as far as a bass player is concerned, and in their live shows, he just took it to another level. His singing style, really good, but
love again Glenn Hughes. Love him.
he's the voice. I love him being
Yeah.
BC.
Oh, my God.
Phenomenal. But back then he did a lot of whelp and screaming, and he
Right.
tried to sound like Stevie Wonder, and it didn't really fit Purple.
He was really in the funk at the time.
Yeah, funk.
And,
Right.
it was a
He
popular
definitely
genre.
brought another
You can
different
definitely
element
hear
to
it.
it.
Well,
The-
yeah,
the-
he's,
I think he
Not-
really
not so
wanted
much
to
on
sing
Burn.
too.
Right.
He really,
No.
Not so much
exactly.
on Burn. I don't think that his influence was that great on it.
Stormbringer, right?
Stormbringer, to me.
Once they got into Stormbringer,
Yeah.
it was really started to get with the
Very funky.
the funk type of sound.
Not that it's a bad album, it's not Purple to me. And who am I? But
there's
No, it's a great
Soldier of
observation.
it's a
Fortune.
great album, but it's
I think-
just
You know, we'll get to that
Yeah,
too.
we'll get to definitely get to that. But with Hughes, the interesting thing, you have this family tree thing. He started with a band called Trapeze.
Right.
And Mel Galley was a guitarist in Trapeze, and years later he joined Whitesnake. They recovered that, so there's your, everybody gets recycled in the family tree. From Trapeze, Tommy Bolin, the guy who replaced Blackmore, he replaced Joe Walsh in the James Gang. when Joe Walshman saw it. And before Purple, then he went on to, he did this album called Spectrum, Billy Cobham. This is a jazz fusion drummer he's right up there with like Krupa and Buddy Rich amongst the drummers, and like drummers. Anyone that records with this guy is a virtuoso. So he was a very talented guitarist, and that's why they brought him into the band, because he was capable. But,
Definitely added another different element.
yeah, it's interesting how he came, from jazz, funk, the fusion, the James Gang, down to Purple.
Changed the face of the band, pretty
Definitely,
much.
definitely.
Pretty much changed the face of the band. And like I said, you didn't really notice that much a huge change, because like Burn is a phenomenal song, and that's another song that a lot of bands cover.
Yeah.
Wasp does an awesome version of fucking Burn, and that's a song that's covered a lot, and I really enjoy that song, and I actually like that album. I think it's fucking great.
Yeah.
Like you said,
I always
Best
love that
albums.
album. Yep.
Definitely.
You know, the riff Burn, it's classic Blackmore. Just,
Yeah.
Powerful. And I always thought, what if that was the next album of Gillan and Glover? What would that sound like?
Right.
Because it was a great album. To me, it was still Deep Purple. There, to Brian's observation and point, there was a great transition to Stormbringer. But Burn really had that same integrity of the Mark II
Right.
lineup.
In that
It did.
opening rocking song,
Yeah.
I think that's a thing that is definitely a string throughout the Deep Purple albums. You have that song right out of the gate that is just like, boom, that hard rocker song that instantly, bang, grabs you by the throat and makes you want to listen to the rest of the album, in the hopes of that you will hear another song like that on the rest of the album.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but that's how I pretty much look at that when I hear a song like that. You want a song like that. And how many times has really the opening riff to Burn been recycled from other bands' songs? I instantly think of I Stole Your Love by Kiss.
You're right.
And Paul Stanley even admits, he said that's our Burn song. He said I modeled that song off of Burn from Deep Purple.
It's just 2 keys up.
And you can hear hey, you're the guy that would know that, But like, can you not?
It's
Right?
But it's Blackmore recycling himself that made him. He was genius. It was basically the same box. And Chris, you're the guitarist, so you could explain it better than me. That all of his his hits came out of Smoke on the Water, Burn. You're playing them out of the same spot.
He was a big fan of the key of G.
Okay.
And if you look at the fretboard, you'll see the proper way to play Smoke on the Water is between the 3rd and 5th fret, and Burns in there, Power's in there.
Since You've Been Gone.
Since You've Been Gone.
Woman from Tokyo.
Woman from Tokyo is in a different key. All Night Long,
All Night
there's just a lot of the same, but he had his power, but it's different. It's really it's the way his right hand strikes the chord. It's
Right.
It's Richie. It's Richie at
his
its
sound,
best.
right.
I mean, if I was able to make a career like Richie Blackmore did out of one box, then I would say, hey, I don't care what you say about me. Don't play Smoke on the Water when you come into a music store. I don't care, because I wrote great riffs and great songs out of that that section of the guitar fretboard.
Right. And you gotta love the glad that they're didn't call it a day, for one thing. And and they, in Coverdale and Hughes, they just brought a different element into the band. We talked about the different funk element there, and just on Burn, Lay Down, Stay Down. Sail Away is a fucking phenomenal song. Sail
Well,
Away.
Might Just Take Your Life too. That's
Yes.
that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite songs on that album, especially the live. Well,
And how about, you guys are the Purple guys. A200?
I
That
think
was
it's cool.
the first
How about-
experiment with the synthesizer.
Yeah.
Very
for
cool.
back in 1974, that's very,
Isn't it?
I was like, I heard that.
like a modern type thing.
Yes.
And actually, if you listen to that, and Here's Kiss again. They used to play a small version of that at the end of I don't know if it's Black Diamond when they were doing the thing when the bombs are going off and shit and the risers are going up. Watch some of the old Kiss shows. Like I want to say, not like really old ones, like from 90s up. You'll hear that.
Really?
You'll hear that. Watch the DVD for Kiss Animalized Live in Detroit, the one that was on MTV. They do that when the risers are going up at the end of the show.
No, I heard that and I thought it was very cutting edge for 1974.
Wasn't it though? I always loved
That's
that
when
song.
the synthesizer that was recorded. That was released in '73, believe it or not. At the end, it was recorded in '73. That's when the synthesizer was invented. And John, being I'm pretty much the premier keyboard player. Let's see what I could do with it. The other band working with that in a big studio in England at that point was Pink Floyd.
Well, the Who too.
They produced Dark Side of the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was really the beginning of synthesizers.
So they were pretty much neck and neck.
Yeah, they were all just playing with
Neck
it
and
at the
neck
same
with that.
time, and it was the first time John Lord ever put one down on an album.
I really always enjoyed that song. It really was refreshing because it was kind of a standout in just experimentation.
Right. And also too, that kind of harkens back to their early stuff. The more progressive type of stuff that was sprinkled here and there throughout their early albums, which is, you're back to your roots a little bit there, which is it's just amazing, and you can't talk about Stormbringer without talking about Mistreated.
Great song.
We've even seen Dio do that song.
Yeah.
We saw Dio do a whole version of that on the Angry Machines tour down in Scranton in a club.
Thanks.
I remember seeing
Fucking
Metallica.
amazing.
Blackmore still does it on his Renaissance tour. He'll play one or two songs with the Strat, and his wife sings Mistreated.
Really?
Yeah.
Seeing Metallica in the '92 tour, when Kurt did his guitar solo, they did Mistreated. They would do various songs
just
throughout,
like little tidbits of different songs.
But I remember because coming home, you had something going on. I remember coming home because Ed and I were rooming at the time in Philly in college, and I said, Ed, I can't even fucking believe this, but they played Mistreated tonight. And you're like, what? I said, Kirk Hammett and Lars Ulrich were on the stage, and Lars goes, any of you motherfuckers know Deep Purple? And I was like, I looked at my buddy, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? He goes, and he starts playing Smoking Away. He goes, no, not that Deep Purple. He goes, this one. And he goes into Mistreated.
Really?
I was like, what the
No
fuck?
shit.
And they played the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah. Because then Lars got on the drums, and then Jason was like under the stage playing it and stuff. And then he went
miss
into his
Jason
guitar.
on Metallica.
What a fucking, what a moment! Like, and that was the first Metallica show I ever saw. I was
that's
like,
amazing.
You can't top it, right? But one of the standouts on this album, especially live, and you'll hear it on Made in Europe, and especially on Live in London, which were the albums that came out afterwards, is You Fool No One. It is a very similar riff in kind of the box that Blackmore uses, but a different key of Rat Bat Blue. But that song is quintessential Deep Purple Blackmore. Mm-hmm. And his guitar solo that he does, I think on Live in London, is one of the greatest live guitar solos you'll ever hear from Richie Blackmore. He fucking kills it.
That entire show might be the best live captured Deep Purple
I agree.
ever.
And they have a shitload of live shit out there.
Yep.
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you look back at this lineup. Little did you know, this could be like one of the first actual supergroups. You know, you didn't know it back then, but what you know now, you look back, you're like, wow.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan, because BB.
Thank you.
I know you just did a show on supergroups, but Deep Purple, really from its inception, was always a supergroup from the core, with Blackmore and Lord. And
From how they conceived it with Roundabout, right?
Yeah, let's put virtuoso musicians
Right.
together. Yep.
Yeah, you look at that lineup, you're like, holy shit.
That's what Black Country Communion, it's kind of a super group today that's an offshoot of Deep Purple.
It really is.
Oh, absolutely.
The lineage of Deep Purple.
I can't get into talking
Dream
about those guys
Theater.
again. They're gonna string me up from the flagpole out in the front if I talk about Black Country
Oh,
Communion
all
again.
right, sorry. I love them too.
Me and Ed are gonna do a show on Black Country Communion. It's just gonna be me and Ed talking about Black Country Communion for 3 hours.
I just have to say one thing about them. If there's one band that preserves that sound, that authentic 70s sound of like guitar, drums, bass and keyboards, it's BBC.
Absolutely. And that may be the one of the, if not the main elements that I really like them. Maybe that's my my retro Deep Purple fandom coming out through those guys.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like maybe they were the missing link that I hadn't listened to these guys. Maybe that's kind of my get back to that
Makes sense.
kind of stuff, because I absolutely, and like I said before, I said I will listen to some Deep Purple, then I would instantly go back to that album, which maybe I have Tourette's or something. I don't know. Fuck. I don't know. Or as my friend Stephen Michael would say, I have musical ADD.
We all have ADD.
Absolutely. So boom, they throw Burn out there.
Yep.
Not Burn out there. And Stormbringer next. Stormbringer, I'm not a huge fan of that one. That one kind of, like, the song Stormbringer is friggin' great.
Yeah.
The Double Dealer is not too bad.
Yep.
But I don't know. As a whole, Soldier of Fortune, I think that's too
I
mellow
think
for me.
I think this one could fall into the group that we always talk about albums if they were not considered. If that album was not considered Deep Purple, it'd be a good album. I think borderline is.
BC, I think you might have nailed it on that
like
one.
the John Corabi Crew
John
album.
Corabi,
Right.
Motley Crue. If you didn't call that Motley
you don't
Crue,
think
that'd
of
be a
Motley
great
Crue.
album.
Yeah.
Quite Right with Paul Shortino.
Paul Shortino.
If that was called Quite Right, that's a great album. I think that's, in my opinion.
Great point. Very, very, very great point. I mean, it's good, but listening to it in the context of Deep Purple, I don't think it really fits.
No, by that point, Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale had really come
Taken
into
over the
their
band.
own. Yeah, they really did, and the blues had crept in and the soul, and Richie hated that. Could not stand that soul.
Right. And that's pretty much what got him to bail the fuck out.
Right. And
Was
ironically,
that
he's the one that
soul
wanted.
in the funk
Yep.
type
Exactly.
sound.
Even though he's the one that wanted Glenn Hughes in the band.
Right.
And
Right.
threw out Roger Glover too. I want this guy. Wait a minute, I don't like this guy.
Yeah. And his, that decision, in retrospect, bit him in the ass. But I do like the dual vocal aspect of having David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes in the band. I like that aspect, and I spoke to one of my friends in the last couple of days here, and about doing different shows and stuff like that. And he wanted to do a show. I mean, this is only 2 singers in the band, but he wanted to do a show with like different singers in the band, like 3 singers and stuff like that. But like, how many bands back in when did that come out? That came out
74 with Stormbringer.
74.
Yeah.
How many bands at that time had 2 different singers in the band?
Good point. They might have been pushing it,
Right?
pushing the boundaries there.
Right?
Back
the
then,
only
yes.
one you can think of is the Beatles, but
Yeah, that's a really good point. Never thought about that.
Right? In 74 and not tooting the horn, but first album, Kiss has 3 different guys singing on it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a big thing then, though. Like, every band, they had their singer, and that was pretty much it.
Yep.
Well, you have-
nowadays
That was your
it's-
role, yeah.
Dual singers,
Nowadays it's nothing.
And
Well, it was it worked really well during Burn and that tour. But by the time Stormbringer came around, if you listen to the live albums from that tour, Glenn Hughes' ego was way out of control. He felt like I should be the only singer, and he would try to upstage Coverdale. It would just be an ugly battle at times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
and drugs were creeping in at that point too.
Yeah, with heroin.
And
They were-
cocaine.
yeah.
They
They were-
was a big
yeah.
cocaine guy, right?
It was a really ugly
See, they
time
can't
for
just
the
drink
band.
beer like BC, right?
That's right.
No,
was
that's
really
what
ugly
Purple.
time.
They were pretty much pub drinkers that smoked pot, and that was it. Even when I was with them, they were just pretty much old hippies that would drink and maybe smoke a joint. So when these new elements were introduced to the band, they kind of missed it. They didn't realize that they brought in like a cokehead, and then when Blackmore left, and then they bring in this other guy for an album, they didn't realize he was a junkie. So, but to your point, I mean, this is kind of why it doesn't sound the same, right? So it wasn't like Burn.
I'm not saying it's bad. It just doesn't have that Deep Purple feel to me.
And I don't think the you had that heavy keyboard
Keyboards,
sound
exactly.
at that point either. You had some, but it wasn't prevalent in the band sound.
It was in the background.
As it was in the other albums, and I think that took away from it. I really do.
Yeah.
And but how could you put John Lord in the background?
They can't. That's basically what Coverdale ended up doing with him and Whitesnake, and that's why he said, you know what, screw you, I'm
Fuck
going to
this shit.
reunite
I'm
with
out of
Deep
here.
Purple.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a whole nother Whitesnake,
Yep.
once they split apart. But we'll move on with the Mark III we're on now, right?
Yep.
I'm just trying to keep the marks straight here. Mark III, next album, what do we got? We have Come Taste the Band. I really like that album. I really do.
Well, that one's 4. Now it's the only Mark IV album.
Who's different?
Tommy Bolin replaced.
Tommy Bolin.
Richie
Oh,
Blackmore.
right. Blackmore got fed up with all the funk shit
Yep.
coming up. And
But
then
still-
the funk stuff kind of really escalated on
yeah.
Come Taste the Band.
Yeah.
Again, I like it. It's good, but does it have the Deep
It's
Purple
not
sound?
purple.
Doesn't
Yeah,
sound a
it-
thing like Deep
it's
Purple.
kinda-
Getting tighter. I like getting tighter, and the
Soldier
Drifter.
of Fortune, great song.
That was Stormbringer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because, ooh,
They were-
Coming Home.
Coming Home.
Coming Home is a phenomenal song.
That's the intro.
BC, this is another one, like you said, standalone. If it wasn't called Deep Purple,
there's tons of CDs out there. They change people. If they called it something different, it'd be good.
yep.
Trying to carry on the name,
Bad.
you can't.
But the name's what sells.
Exactly.
The
yeah.
names is what's going to put the asses in the seats,
Understandable.
buy
but
the albums. But
It's gonna.
maybe they should, put out Motley Crue, put an asterisk there, or Quite Right, asterisk. Paul Shortino on vocals, John Corabi on vocals.
But they're phenomenal albums. You sit there and throw it on, listen to these albums. They're phenomenal if you don't think of who what band it is.
Yeah, so I think the standout for me on that album is You Keep On Moving. That is a really great song from any band by any label.
Right.
And to your point, I think it was misfortune in the sense from the brand of Deep Purple that they took it to this level where people were just confused. Like
Who's going to be in the band next?
who is this band now? Like, where's Richie Blackmore? And I think as we fast forward to Deep Purple's nomination to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there's a bit of confusion as far as the integrity of a core group. Now we're already going down
Who do they put in?
the line of we're in Mark what?
4, right?
And so, I mean, how many groups have marks? Led Zeppelin never had a mark. I mean, Black Sabbath kind of did. But my point is, it's so confusing to the average consumer. Deep Purple just kind of got put in this barrel of, well, they had Smoke on the Water and a couple other songs, and that's it. And I think it really diluted the brand of Deep Purple as a whole. But when you really break it down, like we're breaking it down now, you see the influence and the exceptional musicianship in this band throughout the years. And, I think as we fast forward into the next era, which is actually going back to the Mark II lineup, you see what a band that Deep Purple really was and the integrity of its true core, which was Richie Blackmore, Ian Pace, Ian Gillan, John Lord, and Roger Glover. That's always been Deep Purple.
I agree.
Yep.
I do. Not that anyone else that was ever in the band didn't contribute at some point the sound or to songs, because you have Hush from the first album, like people probably think that's Ian Gillan singing that song.
Yeah, they do. A lot of times.
Who that's Deep Purple. It's got to be Ian Gillan singing it, because you could probably go back. The average person that's listening to, a radio station hears any Deep Purple. They hear Hush, they hear Smoke on the Water. Oh, that's the same guy singing. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're going to come out with. But I was surprised, going back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame, that they did include those other guys. I was very surprised by that.
Yeah.
Good for them. It's cool to see. I'm more happy, I think, to see Glenn Hughes in there than anybody else that was in Mark II. David Coverdale, definitely. Because he'll never get in for fucking Whitesnake.
No.
That's not even gonna. That's my kids may have grandchildren and maybe they'll be inducted maybe when they run out of people to fucking put in there.
Well, Whitesnake is a lot like Deep Purple in the various marks that they put out there, but they took it to a whole different level.
Oh God, yeah.
By just releasing the Whitesnake album.
Their tree is going to be branching off way the fuck out there.
I think we're kind of going down a different road of the tree, but you think about Whitesnake in 1987. A lot of people thought that was a brand new group. Your average teenager thought that was a brand. People didn't even know it was. They didn't know
that's their debut album.
I was like, yeah, that's the guy that sang "Burn," and they're like, what?
Yeah, there was.
I was one of those guys.
Sure.
I was definitely
Great
one of those
marketing.
guys.
Mm-hmm. It was great marketing.
I knew the album Live in the Heart of the City, the live album. That I knew from Ed, actually.
I had that on vinyl.
And actually I had that on vinyl. And I knew that from Ed. And then Love Hunter came out right after that?
Yep.
And then you had the Slide It In was after that. Right? So, and that's John Sykes, and that's a whole different band from the Love Hunter album.
Yep.
And like, if people don't even realize, on the '87 album, that's all John Sykes playing. That's not Adrian Vandenberg and
that was the touring band,
right?
Which was in the video.
Exactly. But
really
John Sykes is that whole
Whitesnake
album.
was.
John Sykes is the whole Slide It In album, and John Sykes is the whole
Whitesnake.
The whole Whitesnake album.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
Vivian Campbell.
Vivian Campbell. And Crying in the Rain, that was on like 3 albums before that. That's a recycled song.
But
like,
when that came out, nobody.
But I was one of those. I mean, I knew Whitesnake from In the Heart and Live in the Heart of the City, but I mean, I didn't know shit about that he was in Deep Purple.
And that album, ironically, has Ian Pace on drums and John Lord on keyboards. Live in the Heart of the City. So you have three-fifths of the Burn lineup on that Whitesnake album. Jesus.
And I rarely admit it. I'm one of those guys that didn't know that.
That's why it was good. That's why you liked it.
I know. But hey, good music is good music. Whatever you put in, and that's another one I have to thank Ed for. Ed is my Deep Purple family tree guy. Got me into all these, Dio and all this stuff. And I can honestly say, if Ed and I weren't friends back in the day, we may not even be sitting here now doing this shit. Seriously. Like, I never heard of Dio or Rainbow, or I was, they were always, and our town isn't a big town, but I consider it divided musically. Mm-hmm. We can maybe go by school district. All the Simpson and Fell Township people were Doors and Blue Oyster Cult and Deep Purple and all that shit. And the guys on our side of town were, Van Halen and Kiss, and it was pretty much divided. And like Ed said, he wouldn't have checked out. I mean, I'm sure he would have eventually found AC/DC, but like, they weren't on your radar till we became friends. But like, all these other bands weren't on my radar until we became friends. Yeah. So it's weird how stuff like that happens. Like, we would have eventually discovered all this stuff, but it's weird how shit works out like that. It's crazy. Where the fuck were we?
That was
Come Taste the Band. Come Taste the Band. Tommy Bolin definitely brought a more of that funk element into the band, and then and that was it for them. That was it for.
Yeah, they went on tour, and Glenn Hughes and Tommy Bolin really paired up well. They became very, very good friends because they started doing a lot of heroin.
It's
together.
like drug buddies. They became drug buddies.
So then it was really two camps. It was John Lord and Ian Pace and Coverdale. And they went on tour, and Bolin shot himself up with so much heroin, he couldn't even play the guitar.
And people were booing him because he couldn't play the Blackmore stuff at all.
Oh, he could barely do bar chords. It was John Lord compensating, doing
Playing the guitar parts on the keyboards.
Yep, it was
Yeah,
embarrassing.
If you want to experience that disaster, listen to Last Concert in Japan.
Yeah, I don't know why they even put it out.
Well, they played a show, and I'm gonna read a quote. It was
contractual.
a quote that those guys put out at the end there. At one point during the show, Glenn said to the audience, "I'm sorry we're not playing very well, but we're very tired and jet lagged." And this is John Lord saying this. "I remember sputtering to myself, 'Speak for yourself. I was working like a Trojan trying to make this work. Pacey was playing like a madman just to keep it all together. Coverdale was singing his socks off. So to hear this guy who was extremely high on various substances telling the audience, 'I'm sorry, we aren't playing very well,' kind of rankled me a bit. I came off stage and went straight to my dressing room, which I share with Ian Pace, and I said, 'Ian, that's it, isn't it? That's absolutely the end of this band as far as I'm concerned. Why are we doing this to ourselves?' So we shook hands and said, 'It's over, thank God.' About 10 minutes later, Coverdale came in, big blustery guy that he is. He says, 'I'm leaving the band.' And we said, 'David, there's no band to leave.'"
Yep, I remember that.
And that summed it up.
Yeah, will you listen to Burn on that? It's all John Lord's keyboards. He couldn't even play it. Horrible.
Where can we find YouTube? That on YouTube, or is it an
Yeah,
album?
well,
or?
it's Last Concert in
Last
Japan.
concert in Japan.
I remember having that on record, and Ed and I would listen to it. We'd laugh, but in disgust. This is an embarrassment of the brand Deep Purple.
Here's my favorite songs.
None.
None.
Right. None. Horrible.
terrible.
So it was released in '77. Now, who in their right mind as a manager would release that as a live recording?
And that's why they got a black on
Hoping to
it.
get some change in the pocket.
But see, this is it. Going back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's more to it. I think there's the business side of it, like really, like the confusion. There's,
About 3,000 different greatest hits albums.
you just don't even know what you got. there.
You couldn't freaking swing a dead cat without hitting a Deep Purple greatest hits album,
Right.
Because they were just trying to capitalize on like fucking everything at that point.
And
Once that's done,
It was the
And-
management, not the band.
Yeah.
They had no control over
Yeah.
it.
So I mean, and they're done from what 1975 to 1984.
Pretty much.
Perfect Strangers comes out, which we talked about a little bit before, but and that's pretty much when Deep Purple really came on my radar. And like I said, I don't know why that didn't spur me to go back and check out the other stuff, but an amazing, amazing album. Knocking at Your Back Door, Under the Gun. My favorite song on there is definitely Nobody's Home.
Love that song.
I absolutely love that song. I love the rapidness of the song. It just trucks along, and it is just like fucking phenomenal.
Ian Pace fueling the whole thing.
Mean Streak, Perfect Strangers, and there's a lot of bands we've seen. Our buddies in
Harpo do it.
They've always done Perfect Strangers, and we
Remember that night?
love when they did that. Yeah,
That first night they came out, dun dun dun. I'm like, no fucking way. I'm like, and then they come out. I'm like, holy shit. I might have been drinking a little bit, but
no, not you.
it was definitely good.
But I mean, and they did a great version of that. It's from front to back. That is a fantastic album. But it's not really. They came out, and I don't know. I'm sure it was maybe by design. There's not that 10-minute song. There's not that 9-minute song. Not getting your back door is like 7 minutes long. That's the longest song on there, and that's pretty much to the intro of the song. But there's no long extended solos. There's no long. They're concise songs. They come out and bang. But this album too, you don't have that really kick-ass rocker at the beginning either, which is one of the few Deep Purple albums that you don't have that. You could see maybe like Under the Gun or Nobody's Home or maybe even Gypsy's Kiss being first on that, like a straight-out rocker coming out. But I think they kind of changed it up a little bit on that album and come out with Knocking at Your Back Door. It's not your typical out-of-the-gate rocker for that.
So do you guys know what brought these guys back together? Is there a story that you guys know of, or?
Yeah, basically, Ian Gillan, even though he was, he just replaced Dio, Black Sabbath, and they did a tour.
Born
Great
Again.
album. Born Again was.
I just wish it was produced better. It's produced so fucking terrible.
The mix is so bad.
It's like mud.
But the songs are good, though. The
Yep.
songs are really good.
Yes, they are. But he realized that when he was touring with them, that his heart wasn't into it. He could care less about memorizing any of Ozzy's lyrics. So he
I want to sing my own shit.
right. He was nostalgic for it again, and they got together in New York with Glover and Blackmore because they were both in Rainbow at the time. As long as those three said yes, then they called Pace. Said, well, you're
What's the
playing with
three,
Gary
right?
Moore. Are you interested? And he said, wait a minute, the three of you are in New York talking? You're actually talking? Yeah. And then John Lord is like, he was fed up with being pushed to the sideman in Whitesnake.
Right.
When really the early Whitesnake, he really helped David become Whitesnake. David
Right.
Coverdale becomes, and it's almost like David forgot where he came from. That John Lord gave him his break back in '73 with Purple, so he was more than happy to join. So then they go up to Connecticut, and all five of them in the same room. The way they tell it, the tension, you can almost cut it with a knife in the air, right?
I'm sure it was probably one of them things. You're like, who's gonna talk first?
Yeah.
Who's gonna get the ball
Who's
rolling
gonna break
here?
the ice? Yeah.
You know, do we talk about the weather first? Hey, how the Yankees doing?
Well, they shot some of it on video. The classic thing is when Gillan shows up, Blackmore sticks his hand out to shake his hand, and then Gillan sticks his out, and Blackmore pulls his back. And then Gillan gives him this look for a second, but then they both laugh.
Yeah, so they made their way to Stowe, Vermont, and I think they rented a mansion or something up
Yeah.
there, and that's where they recorded "Perfect Strangers." And it was, it's a ski village, and I
Well,
think
the first track they did together is really when they said it'll work. It's that jam session that was on the EP of Perfect
Yes.
Strangers, Son of Alaric.
"Son of
That's right.
Alaric," which is a great
So
song.
after they were sitting there, I think it was Glover who said, "Now let's just pick up the instruments and see what it sounds like." And just 2-3 seconds into it, they said they all looked at each other and just it flowed so well. And that's one of those nice jams. It was total spontaneous. That's one of those 7-minute songs.
And you can tell it's like this
sounds
is
like
what we need to be
deep,
doing.
right.
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
this is
Yeah, it was.
First time
this is
they
it.
recorded together since '73, made music together since '73, and it sounded like Deep Purple again. Even wow.
It's kind of like all these divorces over 10 years, let's say, that they all kind of got back together for the first time, and Richie was really in a different direction with his playing in Rainbow. I think he had matured into more of a neoclassical player. He was
And
more of
pop, too.
He was more of a blues player in Purple, and we've talked about this, Ed. I think he saved some of his best shit for Perfect Strangers out of Rainbow.
Yeah. The rumor is he had that in his reed box for the last few years of Rainbow, but he always thought that this would be a great song for Deep Purple if we reunite.
Right.
So he didn't put it out
Back.
on Rainbow. But, yeah,
Hey, thank you.
definitely.
Thank you.
And
Much rather hear that than Joel and Turner sing it.
Fuck yeah.
we talked about this a little bit earlier, Steve, when you got into Deep Purple through Perfect Strangers, and at that time, at least for Ed and I, we got into Deep Purple in the early '80s, and it seemed like the impossible dream to see Mark II or any form of Deep Purple. As a matter of fact, I remember reading something that there was a rumor in 1980 that Deep Purple was going to get back together, and people got sued over it. It was this concert they were going to put
They
out
put
in
some. They did
California.
put something out.
Rod
Yeah.
Evans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Original.
put something out and they didn't have permission to use the name, and they
Yep.
in
Yeah.
Deep Purple themselves they won the lawsuit.
Right, and so
Yeah.
that was kind of a, I guess it was only
You get
a few
the
years within,
and
but
then
it
it's
was
like,
it was like, well, okay, so fast forward to 1984, and at that time the only way you would consume information about music was through Circus or Hit Parade or
Yep.
magazine,
Pick up your magazine.
and I remember at the end of the last page, it was the inset last page. I don't know what they called it, like news bits or whatever, of Circus magazine. There was something about Deep Purple reuniting. The rumor, Rainbow may end,
And Raven was very popular in 1984. I mean, it had bent out of shape out, prior to that.
Street of Dreams.
MTV.
Straight Between the Eyes was a huge album, and you were just like, nah, it can't be, because they just hated each other. And when that album came out, as it matured in the publications that we consumed, I remember, I think it came out. Did it come out in like late '84? And we picked it up, and I remember Ed had this great stereo.
Yeah, October of '94 it came out.
Of '84, yeah. And I remember you picking up the cassette, because the cassette had the extra track on it.
Yep. Not responsible.
And so going down into, my parents had a basement kind of rec room, and just, okay.
We were nervous.
Let's take it for a
Very
spin.
nervous.
What's it gonna sound
Yeah.
like?
And boom, dun, 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 dun. Right into knocking at your back door. We're like, okay, it's not Smoke and Water, but this sounds great.
Right.
And then, the next song in is Under the Gun. You're like, wow, okay.
But
And you go through the album, and we didn't hear a single at the time, because it was Deep Purple, It was like,
But it's funny that you say that. Now, just going back on what I said about the song not being an outright rocker, now that you just saying that you guys picked that up, that I could see how they did that now, because I wasn't a Deep Purple fan waiting for this to come out, like, oh my God, please reunite and bring something out. But for the people that did, I think that kind of gave you guys a little anticipation, like, it's all right, it sounds good so far, but like, come on, like get into the song. Yeah. I could absolutely see that. I could see you guys sitting down there going like,
I had a shit-eating
come
grin.
on, fucking kick in, motherfucker. Yeah. I could absolutely say that. And
then you get,
like I said, not being a Purple fan,
Well, to me,
I could see how that is a perfect song to come back to.
It starts with John Lord. To me, he was Deep Purple. He was the Purple and Purple. There was no other band that had a lead keyboard player.
but then you get into Under the Gun. It starts out with Ian Pace. But okay, so like now I think as we relive this, we're going back to the early '70s, and just like Fireball.
This sounds like that, and this sounds like that,
and then Nobody's Home. The keyboards. It's just like the maestro, and then the riff. It's just it's like, oh shit.
The vocals come
okay,
bang. They
we're
come
on
right
it.
in.
Then Mean Streak. And then Perfect Strangers is like, holy shit.
Kickoff side 2.
We are in.
We're back, bitches.
And
we're
then
back.
Gypsy's Kiss, Wasted Sunset, Hungry Days, Not Responsible, and then okay, so let's listen to it again. And I think we listened to it about 4 times, and we were in. It was it was probably different for us because we were waiting for this to happen. But
exactly
what I was rooting for at the time is what happened. People like you discovered them for the first time. Brian and Steve. This was a charted album that people appreciated, the band that I appreciated for all those years, but never had the experience to really see in its current form. And here they were, Mark II, the Deep Purple lineup with a new album that just fucking kicked ass.
I never thought of it that way, but I felt validated as a Deep Purple fan.
You kind of rooted for it.
Yep.
And here it was, and people now knew who Deep Purple was again,
right.
At least of my age.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know why I did not go at that point go back, but you didn't have your iTunes and shit like that, so like we talked about before, there was so much other stuff out then. Like, all right, am I gonna check out the new Motley Crue album, or am I gonna go back and buy an old Deep Purple album? And not to degrade Deep Purple or anything like that, but like. You were always at that point looking forward instead of looking back, and I think that's maybe the main reason why I personally didn't actively go back and check out the older stuff, because there was so much shit out there. And like I said, do you want the new Dokken album, or do you want to go back and listen to an album that was produced when you were in the fucking crib, pretty much? But
as you discovered it,
but as
how fresh was it?
This last 2 weeks have, kicked me right in the ass and saying like, you stupid ass, you should have.
Probably almost a week ago, I'm going to him. I said, "Holy fuck!" I said, "I didn't realize it went back this far and there was this much material." I was very surprised. A good
This
surprise.
was good stuff.
Good stuff.
Right.
A good surprise.
Like, I mean, you kind of knew what was out there, like overall albums. You knew the album titles. I knew in rock, and they're like you said, it's an iconic album cover. You knew in rock, you knew Fireball. Made in Japan. You've seen that album fucking everywhere. But like musically, we just didn't sink our teeth into it. And thank you, podcasts. I will personally thank our own podcast and Ed and Chris here just to get us out there. And the funny thing is too, BC and I we've been into this and we've been friends with music for fucking ever. And it's funny because like a lot of stuff, like we'll talk about doing shows and BB's like, oh, I got to check them out and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, that's so cool. But like this is one that like even BC and I had to delve back into. It wasn't something that we were, up on or really familiar with. Like and I feel kind of hypocritical saying it. We were fans of the hits, and we rage against that like very actively on this podcast. But the Deep Purple hits are not like like Highway Star. You can't say Highway Star is the same kind of hit that Every Rose Has Its Thorn as a fucking hit. You can't put those hits in the same category. So I feel a little bit validated, but like it's not Highway Star is not the same as Come On Feel the Noise.
No.
It's just not. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry quite right. It's just fucking not. You're not Deep Purple.
No band at that point, 72, actually put classical riffs with blues. They were the first to do that. And that's why Highway Star sounds different. 99.9% of the people that hear on the radio and like it don't get it. But his solos and progressions were different. Black Sabbath didn't do it. Zeppelin didn't do it.
And the thing is, they like it, but they don't know why they like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really like this. I'm not sure why, but I really like that.
See, that's how I thought, but I wasn't going to say it. I love Deep
Feel
Purple.
free.
I love Deep Purple's hits after going through all this. So here's a question from a Kiss fan to a Deep Purple fan. Like, we hate Beth and we hate Rock and Roll All Night. Is there a Deep Purple song you guys hate? Like Burn or Perfect Strangers?
Or you roll your eyes or go take a piss when it comes
I'm
on.
so sick of this fucking Deep Purple song.
That Smoke in the Water has to
Yeah.
be.
I was going to say that.
Has to be.
Yeah, Smoke on the Water, but you brought up
Probably
an
just
interesting
'cause it's
point,
just-
Steve, in the solo. Maybe it's because I'm a guitar player. It's just, Richie was a great phraser. He just was very melodic in his solos, and he created the tension. And I still listen to that solo, the studio version, and I enjoy it. The live version's much better, but I don't say that, I want to listen to Deep Purple, I'm going to put Smoke in the Water on. If it's on the radio, I'll say, yeah,
Right.
there's a connection I have, I think, with Deep Purple always, where I was rooted for them, I guess is the way. And we always kind of looked at it, and having the opportunity to work with them down the road was just kind of icing on the cake, and really rooting for them because we did our own grassroots promotion with them. But Deep Purple was not really, to me, a hits band. They were just a band that was a musician's band, and
Touring band.
they just happened to have some hits.
Right.
And they were, and I still feel to this day are disrespected, even though they made it to the Hall of Fame. And that's not the mark of a great band. I just always felt that Deep Purple was disrespected, but more so misunderstood from a musical standpoint. And we just went through all these marks. Like, who the fuck talks about marks of bands and taking a band's name?
I'm surprised that the Kiss Army has not embraced that terminology.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's
I'm very surprised by that. I was thinking about that as we're talking here, because you have the original band. They could be Mark 1, and then Peter's gone, Eric Carr's in Mark 2, and then Ace is gone, Vinny's in Mark 3.
4,
I mean,
5,
I'm very surprised that the Kiss Army has not embraced that terminology, because I can't do it right off the top of my head what mark they're actually on now.
6?
Because when they did, Cyclo Circus, what I said before, that was the Mark 1 band back again.
Right, exactly.
Which really the Mark I actually only played like I think maybe on one song on the
Well, Mark I would be what? Wicked Lester. No, I guess because it was his name.
But seriously, like I can't believe that they have not embraced that terminology.
And that's something that Deep Purple has often, as long as I remember, Deep Purple, they always had marks, and even when they did the VH1 special a few years back, they referred to the marks. And so perhaps it was connected to Deep Purple, but it really does make sense as far as formations of bands and how they carry the
right,
brand
and,
with the
and
name.
just of who's in what at the time.
It's very British terminology.
I think that's what it is.
It could be.
Very
It could
British.
be. Absolutely. Perfect Strangers. Great. You saw them for that tour, Ed?
Yep, fortunate enough to see them in Philadelphia.
Bastard. There's the stereo.
So that was, I've seen hundreds of concerts, and it's not just looking back and being a fanboy, but that night was magical. They were on, they were having fun. You could just see the smiles, like you could just hear this little.
That makes a world of difference. World of
Absolutely, they're having a good time, and you're having those magical moments that you go for, and you just see, you hear something that, whoa, did he just play that? And then you could see the eye contact acknowledging, like John Lord, what Blackmore did, or Blackmore saying, hey, just a look at John Lord with that amazing keyboard solo he would do. I think it culminated when they played, for their jam, they did Beethoven's Ninth. Ode to Joy. And it was just amazing. It was 5 people and they sounded like a symphony. And then from that into John Lord's keyboard solo, which was like hearing a maestro play. And then from that into Space Trucking, which just blew your mind after not hearing that played live. 10 years wanting to see that live.
I remember when Ed came. It was a situation where age kind of played into it, and although I had already seen a concert, which was Ozzy and Motley Crue, your first concert and mine, ironically, right? It was because it was like January of '84, so this was like February of '85, and I think Ed went with some friends or something, and it was in Philadelphia, so from where we are geographically, it was a little different than going to Binghamton, New York, and I just couldn't go. It was super disappointing for me, and I remember when he went, and I think you were even, God, man, I wish you can go with me, and he came back and not only bring me a tour shirt, he brought a bootleg copy of the whole show on cassette that this guy that he went with happened to bring in a tape recorder, and Ed took the tape home to say, I'll make copies of it. So I got to hear the whole concert.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, holy fuck. I mean, talk about a band on fire. Oh, my God.
And that's great with Ed saying that you could tell they're having a good time. I mean, you've seen tons of concerts. We've all here seen tons of concerts. You could tell when a band is having a good time and when a band is going through the motions.
Yep.
And, I mean, maybe a casual fan will not notice that. But, like, we've seen some shows within the last couple of years, we kind of left shaking our heads going, dude, they fucking mailed that the fuck in. It may not even be the whole band.
Just a guy.
It may be just the one guy. Because we just, who did we just see, BC?
Quite right.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Alice Grossi.
Yep.
Drummer, Frankie Benelli, usual craziness. James Durbin, singer, excellent. Chuck Wright on bass, no relation. Did a great show. Alice Grossi, he just stood there and fucking strummed like he was a guy behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Totally
Paycheck.
mailed it the fuck in. I mean, he played good, but he just totally mailed it in. And to see a band, especially a band that is revitalized and getting back together, is just got to be great. Because like you as a fan, if you're a fan of that shit, if a band's having a good time. We saw Tesla at M3, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. Totally mailed it in.
Dude.
Totally mailed it the fuck in.
Shame.
Yeah,
Like,
'cause I like Tesla. They're a great band.
and I don't know if they were fucking hammered up or whatever. I think Frank Hannon was fucking toasted. And actually, I think it was the same year Trickster played. And the guitar player fucking hammered. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, fucking shit-faced. You can tell they're fucking hammer playing. Hey, listen, they're not Faster Pussycat. They can play fucking hammered.
Right.
Oh, they're the Godfather.
Some bands can, some bands can't.
Van
But
Halen
like
was
Trickster
back in
could
the
not
day.
do it. Yeah, yeah.
Just
But like
efficient.
when a band is on, you know when they're having a good time, and you know when they're not. But it's great to hear that they weren't just back together just to line their pockets again.
Yeah, I think going back to the album itself, it was the tagline that they put, at least on the tour book and kind of in the ads. It was Destiny brought them together. Period. Again. Period.
Right.
It was, in my humble opinion, a true sense of reunion, and they created great music. It needed to happen. It was organic, and when they went out on tour, it was maybe better than seeing them in '72. And starting with Highway Star, the way they did it on Made in Japan, they come out,
Right.
just
Building it.
boom, boom. There's Deep Purple, but yet with a video board and everything that happened in 1985. I mean,
The technology finally caught up with them.
Mm-hmm. Not only are we seeing Deep Purple in its true form of the Mark II lineup, but we are seeing a more mature band from a musician's perspective. But they are playing their hearts out to, not because they're getting paid to do it, because they're enjoying
They're
it.
enjoying it and they want to do it. And they're mature in the sense that they have probably thousands of shows under their belt at this point.
Yeah.
And they've been in that situation, they've left it, now they're back. They know what the fuck else is out there. They know what it is to play like with people that you're just hiring just to fucking play. Now you're back playing with the dudes that you actually created this shit with, that you had fun with back in the day.
Now, to put it in perspective, charts. We talk about charts here, and I know the Van Halen battle had lots to do with charts, which doesn't matter. But I think
Here's Dreams playing in the background.
this is a salient point in terms of Deep Purple's relevancy in 1984, 85, with people that were discovering him for the first time, or just the interest that they had as a band in what they did. Bruce Springsteen in 1985 was the highest grossing act in
Born in
America.
the USA.
Born in the USA. Yep.
You know
New
who was the
stadiums.
second?
Deep Purple.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point, because even when I saw them in the Spectrum, and I think 4 or 5 days before the show they added a second night, and that sold out too.
Yeah. You're talking 18,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was pissed because I couldn't stay and go see them again for the second night.
And we thought you were a fan, Ed.
No,
You call yourself a fan.
I'm not dedicated.
They ended up headlining Nebworth Day.
Yeah.
Too, which that's I don't know what they call it now. Download.
Download. It was Nebworth, and then it was
but
Monsters of Rock, and
It's
then
always going to be
it's turned into
Nebworth.
Download.
But that's a huge festival, and they headlined it.
Yeah. So I mean, they do that. They tour. They do another album with the Mark II
Yep. House
lineup.
of Blue Light.
House of Blue Light came out in January of '87.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have another album, another tour under their belts, and
Same old problems started to creep in though with Blackmore at that point.
egos get going again, and
Yep.
conflicts start to go crazy. And what do you got on that, Ed?
Blackmore at that point was, if he didn't like anyone else's idea, he wasn't exactly diplomatic about
His
it.
way or no way.
On top of that, plus he didn't give a shit if he insulted you in the process, So he took a lot of creative control. Glover, because he had played with him for so many years in Rainbow, he'd been the producer for Nazareth and many bands. He was at
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest, yes.
There's another thing on the tree. He produced Sin After Sin.
Yeah. So
You remember what it sounded like in the late 80s? Like MTV, it's like, synthesizer rock and all that.
Keyboards.
They tried to make it sound modern. And it just, as a matter of fact, Sean Lord wouldn't participate, and Roger Glover actually did some of the synthesizers on that album.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So then when they go out on tour, the creative controls that happened in the studio leaked over. Gillan and Blackmore, bam.
Right. It's a good album, though.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yep.
Like Unwritten Law, I think I feel like that song really stood out for me.
Yep.
Like when I put on Bad Attitude, I'm like, holy fuck! Like that was a song too. I'm like, I've heard this a ton of times before.
That was the hit.
Yeah.
That was the single.
That was
Well,
the-
actually,
that-
Call of the Wild
Call of
was
the Wild.
Call of the Wild.
hit, which
That's
was
probably my least favorite Deep Purple
I'm not
song.
a fan of
That was-
that.
yeah,
I didn't
I
care
knew
for that
something
either.
would come
See,
up.
there's a hit
There
that
you
we didn't
go.
care
Yeah.
for.
there. That was
Yeah,
horrible.
and why we're going to put that's our single on MTV. The worst video I've ever seen.
Yeah, Deep Purple wasn't made for MTV in
No,
1987,
no.
and they just tried to, square peg round hole.
Fit in.
I think the songs that really stand out on that album are Mad Dog, Spanish Archer is great, especially the outro solo. I mean,
Yeah.
Blackmore fucking rips it. Black and White is great. Strange Ways, Mitzi
yeah.
Dupree, Dead or Alive. There's a lot of great songs on it.
I'm thinking at that point that with them throwing Call of the Wild out there and stuff, I'm thinking that's record company having more input in what's going on than
Well, sure.
more say than what the
Yeah.
band has, because
Number 2
MTV's
tour,
running
big
wild at
selling
that time.
album, yeah. Hey,
MTV's running wild, and they want the poppiest, quotations, catchiest song on the album to get out there
you
to
go.
do a video for.
Well, the best thing about the video was it was the most campy video I've ever seen in my life. The theme of the video was Deep Purple doesn't do videos, and so they brought all these people in while they play the song,
Off the streets.
trying to find Deep Purple to do the video, and they can't find them, and it's like embarrassing to watch it.
Like a nun picks up Blackmore's guitar and starts
During the
playing
solo.
air guitar.
I've never seen it. I will post it though.
You want to throw up? Just watch that video.
You want to throw it?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't like it already.
So that was the state of Deep Purple in 1987. The tour, it was good. That was the first time I saw them. It was basically the Perfect Strangers tour with some of the new songs added in,
Right.
and they were playing really well.
And I saw both nights.
I was gonna say you saw that, Ed, though. Was there much difference between seeing them on the House of Blue Light tour and Perfect Strangers tour? Could you tell that there were maybe a little bit of cracks going on there?
I could by the second night. So the first night of the tour, you saw it with me.
Yeah.
They were on. It was just like, hey, awesome.
Here we go, right?
But then the night after, he'd gone home, and I went to see him. You could tell it just wasn't there.
Right. Could that have been a 2 night in a row kind of thing?
Maybe. Or, me thinking that my band is perfect every night, and they could have a bad night.
And they're not, right?
I got spoiled. First time I saw them, again, hundreds and hundreds of concerts. That's still top 5. Just the energy in the spectrum that night was insane.
Right. And I gotta say, you guys, Chris and Ed, you're the only ones at this table that has seen them. Hopefully, we will get to see them. We talked about their album, the new album Infinite, I'm sorry. Made my top 5. Absolutely fucking love it. We're gonna wrap up at this point on our Deep Purple Mark II episode. We will pick up after the House of Blue Light tour when Jolene Turner comes into the band. We'll talk about that, and we'll go from there to Richie Blackmore. Ian Gillan coming back for one more album, and then Richie Blackmore taking off again. And we'll pick up there. I want to, we'll go around the table, give us our last Deep Purple thoughts here, and we'll start with BB.
Like I said before, even though In Rock came out in 1970, it's new music to me. It's doing my homework. It's great to actually hear old music, but it's new music to me. Being the young buck here, great concept of discussion here. I hope our fans like this. It was really cool to hear your stories of like how close you guys were. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I thought I knew some Purple, but I really learned Purple. And to hear your side of what you guys were around, that's so cool.
Yeah, for me, this was different from the other episodes that I participated in. I've always had a strong affinity with Deep Purple, as we kind of illustrated through the show tonight. Family thing with my brother, and I think that it's really a great style of structure of what we went through. All eras of Deep Purple, all marks, and it gets a bit confusing to the normal listener, and so when you kind of round it all up, Deep Purple has always been one of the most talented rock bands. I don't want to classify them as metal. They're really a hard rock band, and I've always enjoyed the music that they produced, and I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to discuss it with you guys. You guys have really always have a great way of understanding and just kind of building on different topics, and we really had a great discussion tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really fun to talk about this again. Brought back a lot of memories, and it really made me think about Deep Purple's legacy. So I think when we look back 20, 30 years from now, maybe when our kids are our age, they'll look back at Deep Purple the way we look back at, say, Bach or Beethoven, Smoke on the Water. Dun, dun, dun. It's the same thing as dun, 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 dun.
Right, excellent. And, I want to take this opportunity to thank Ed and Chris for coming on the show here. Chris, you're a three-peater for us, and, thank you. And I always like when Chris is on the show, because we're like fucking goofballs, me, BC, and BB. And Chris is like, he's our straight man. He's like he's the guy that he's like, just boom, he's like right there straight and keeps us guys in line. And Chris, we love having you on the show. I mean, trust me, if we didn't like having you on the show, you wouldn't have made it past the first episode. And we appreciate you coming on.
I always say I'm honored to be with you guys. We're longtime friends, and so I love what you guys are doing. To be able to bring this to the masses on a podcast format and kind of drill down to the details that we discuss. It feels like being back in high school to a degree, and just kind of sitting around.
This is the lunch table.
A lunch table, or a study hall table, just talking about what's happening in music, and I love it.
Maybe we should change the name of the podcast to The Lunch Table. And like I said, I appreciate Chris and Ed. I want to thank you for coming on the show with us tonight, and your insights and your knowledge in Deep Purple. It just like blows my mind. But like you're like with Deep Purple, like I am with Kiss, and BC's like with everything else. But. And I want to thank you personally for bringing me into the realm that we're talking about tonight. Dio and Rainbow and Deep Purple were not on my radar at all when we became friends. But and here's another case where music makes another friendship. Yep. And this was, I'm talking, we were probably 1981, 1982. When we became friends, yep. And we kind of lost touch over, life happens, and then we have Chris on the show, and then I think the first time I saw you was at the Static in the Attic show, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago down the road there, and I'm like, holy fuck, that's Ed, yep. And and here we are full circle talking about the stuff that you got me into, mm-hmm. and I appreciate that, and I'm glad we were able to rekindle our friendship, and that's what music's about. You guys get out there. Talk to music about your friends, and you never know what new friends you'll make over music. And Chris, we're not in a huge town, but like really, if you think about it, Ed, guys from like our side of town never really mixed with your guys' side of town,
right?
And music made us friends. We had a common bond there, right. And I brought you different stuff, but we just had a common bond of that music, and I appreciate that.
It was Van Halen.
Yeah,
that was our
Van
bond.
Halen was the common denominator there.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wait, we don't listen to AC/DC over on the west side because that's a
right.
set. And then if
I didn't meet you and we didn't talk about Van Halen, I wouldn't have learned, wow, this AC/DC stuff. There was a guy named Bon Scott before the singer now.
Right.
Now, see that Van Halen back in the original format was so great that it united two sides of a town.
See that there was going to be a civil war taking place, but Van Halen brought us to the negotiation
We
table.
tore down the viaduct.
Diamond
Yeah.
Dave. Diamond Dave. made peace.
Now, just to clarify, Jen, that's Diamond Dave Van Halen.
Diamond
Van
Dave,
Halen.
baby. Van Halen.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and and like I said, I appreciate you guys coming on. We had a great conversation tonight. We absolutely created a nightmare for Dylan to edit. So you got a whole week, Dylan. So get to work. And I just want to thank everybody out there for listening. And guys, get out there, check out more Deep Purple than Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and all that stuff. Just get out there, dig deep into those albums. Listen to some of the key songs that we've checked out here, and check out the Rat songs. Okay, we're gonna be anytime that you see rat in there, BC's gonna change it to raccoon. But like seriously, you guys, there's some awesome music out there, and you just need to open yourselves up to it. Don't be afraid of the live versions. Thank you, Ed. If you want to check out anything, start with Made in Japan. Throw your headphones on, put on Deep Purple, Made in Japan.
Turn it up.
And just turn it up. Okay, you guys? Seriously, just do me that favor. Check it out. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Check us out on iTunes. Check us out on Facebook. Interact with us. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know what's your favorite Deep Purple song. Please don't say Smoke on the Water. Okay? If you do, I hope you like it like I do because of the guitar solo. And that's the only reason I don't switch that song when it comes on. Unless it's past the solo, then I always switch it out. But seriously, you guys out there, check us out, share us with your friends, and we will see you next time, and there will be a next time.